Hello everybody, Joey Morgan here, and welcome to a very special video here on Security Kitchen Productions. We are doing a continuation of our previous novel adaptations retrospective. Last time we covered the Time Worm arc, over a year ago now, right? We did this about this time last year, right? Is that right?
I think it was December last year.
That wouldn't be last year, that would be the year before.
Right, December 2 years. Sorry.
Look, time
it's
is confusing.
Shut the fuck up.
Time is confusing when you've gone through 2020. All right. So today I have with me here Jacob Bicklider.
Hello.
And I have Brian Corkin, aka Briarheart02.
Man, I really need to work on my filter.
Yeah, you already cursed, and I said no cursing in this video, Brian. So, nah.
Look,
anyway,
there is one fucking one of our adaptations. It's fine.
Okay, well, you know.
Well, now actually, Jacob, you idiot.
There was
Notice
one in
how
Warhead.
I the bomb in that sentence, Jacob.
There was shush. Okay, there was one in Warhead. There was one in Witchmark. There was going to be one in Scales, but I ended up cutting that. And there's going to be a ton in Transit, but Transit's not out yet. So, anyway, we're going to get going. Today we are talking some behind the scenes for, we're picking up at the end of our 2019 adaptations because we never covered Time of Your Life. And we're going to go up to Scales of Injustice, which we just finished last month on the channel. So I guess let's get into it. Let's start talking about the making of Time of Your Life. So, casting. Jacob, anything?
Maybe we should talk about scripting first.
Scripting, whatever. Jacob, the scripting process is always the same with you.
Well, no, this one was a bit different because we decided to do a VMA instead of just doing all VNAs, and then doing VMAs.
Well, I remember the reason that I guess the reason that we did Time of Your Life to begin with was that all the other classic doctors are in the Time Worm arc, and we want to do Missing Adaptation anyway. Yeah, and 6 doesn't show up, so we're just like, well, we have Brian does an amazing 6 impression. We're like, well, we'll have him be the 6th Doctor.
Yeah, and it was either going to be this or State of Change.
Well, yeah. Well, I love State of Change as well, but I think the worry at the time was casting companions, that we weren't going to find the right person to play Perry, and we did in the end, so we probably should have gone for State of Change anyway, but we had already decided on Time of Your Life.
And I think I had probably already started scripting Time of Your Life when...
Yeah, by the time that we got Avery to do the Perry cameo in Revelation, we were like, well, we had already started with Time of Your Life, yeah.
And I think when we made the decision anyway, we didn't know there was even going to be a Perry cameo in Revelation, because that was tossed in during the scripting.
Well, no. Yeah, well, no, you had already written it in, but I think we had left a lot of the cameos in Revelation open for interpretation. We were like, wait, it could be anyone, really. Perry was a placeholder.
There is, in fact, an audio on my own channel with me and Avery as the 6th Doctor and Perry, so you should go check that out if you want to hear that.
That is true, and you're both amazing, I might add. Yes, Time of Your Life. What was scripting for Time of Your Life, Jacob?
It was actually kind of different because it was the first time I adapted a book that was from the range that had actually started to go places. Like, you kind of forget that the early, the Time Worm books, and to an extent the Cat's Cradle books, they're still kind of really brought down to this is just like a television story of Doctor Who, just in case the show might be coming back. But with Time of Your Life, you're at the point of, no, the show's not coming back. We can do our own thing. So Steve Lyons doesn't write it.
By the time it was published, Benny was already a character in the Virgin Publishing years, and I think they were gearing up to do Chris and Roz, right? They hadn't done them yet. So original companions were definitely open for the Virgin Publishing range at that point. But that was the first time they ever tried it in the Mystic Adventures, with the inclusion of Grant Markham, which was another precast that we decided kind of early on would be you, Jacob.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit different. You don't. You don't act in a ton of the adaptations to begin with, Jacob, and you're like,
and even when I'm in, I'm usually just a smaller part because
that's probably another thing that fed into us wanting to do Time of Your Life, because we were very concerned about companion casting, and we were like, well, it's an original companion. It could be one of us because we wanted a regular that could come back for future stories. And I don't know why. I like maybe in our minds like it we didn't think that our regulars would keep coming back forever, but there are people that have been in almost every single adaptation that we've done. So I think we were very unsure of ourselves back then, at least when we had first decided to do the story.
Oh, we were definitely unsure of ourselves. We were worried. Like,
Joey, do you wear glasses?
I don't wear glasses.
Okay, so you couldn't have been Grant Markham anyway.
I genuinely think that was part of the decision too, is that we wanted to maybe do like a photo mock-up version of the cover instead of just doing what we did.
Oh God, I remember that. We didn't. Oh God. Oh, I still have those files somewhere on my computer. So
you should show them, because this is the only place they'll be acceptable to see.
So I might throw them up on the screen. I don't know if I will. I probably won't, because I'm too. They're awful. But we back when we were still going to do the book covers for the Missing Adventure adaptations, I was like, I'm going to try to try my hand at Photoshop for the very first time, and try to make a cover for this thing. And so I ended up getting like this really awful, like generic city background, the shot of Colin Baker holding an axe from Vervoids, and this awful CG T-Rex. It was so bad.
Wait, I have seen this. Yeah, I remember that. I think you actually had me on call while we had recorded something else, and afterwards we were talking about it, and you were like, actually, I have a mock-up cover. And you showed me, and I was like, dude, I'm sorry, but that's kind of ass.
Yeah.
Oh God. So yeah. So we tried that. That didn't work out. And so I made my own Time of Your Life cover with the book artwork from the side there, the Missing Adventures. And then a friend of me and Brian's, what should I call him? He goes by a couple of different. Well, I guess I'll go by his credit name, John Davies, who I'd read an audiobook for before, and you have too, Brian, I think.
Yeah, I have.
And he stepped forward and he was like, I could upgrade that, and he made this amazing cover for Time of Your Life that not only was first off just a lot better composed than mine, but he also made this really cool sort of sidebar style for the Missing Adventure adaptations that I was really happy with.
Yeah, and it makes the Missing Adventures feel like a range, and I love it. It's
so I was very happy with that. So then we started casting, and casting was actually really fun. Did we end up cutting? I think we did end up cutting a couple people, maybe, because I think we got a few too many auditions for this story, if I remember correctly. But this is it's weird to think back to this time, Jacob, but this was only the second story we ever did with Taya.
It is, and it was. It was also the second story we only ever did with Avery. This was. For me, this was the story to see if we were actually going to continue really past Time Worm. Like, Time Worm happened, but Time Worm was like a mini-series. Like, we did the mini-series. Now we have to try to get people for a single story, a story that's really, it's like none of these characters ever show up again except Grant. And we kind of played up the fact that that like not giving me the cover credit, we gave it to Taya, even though
yeah, you specifically wanted that, I remember, because I was like, oh, we could just give you the cover credit, and you're like, no, I want to make it that
well, because it is a twist in the book. It is a twist in the book.
I get Jacob's reasoning for that, though, because Grant, at least in the adaptation, I'm not sure if this is the same in the actual book, Grant doesn't play like a huge, almost
he doesn't. He's a background role. He does a couple of things with a subplot that I actually cut out of the book, out of the adaptation completely. Like,
this is the first one, Dominic.
Taya's character name I can't remember is very much the
the
for that
character. I
story.
feel so bad that I can't remember the name of the character.
Angela Jennings.
Angela Jennings. Yes, that is correct.
Was this the first one?
Yeah. So
I pulled up the cast list, and I'm just like, was this the first one where we used Josh Duffy?
Yes, it was, because I remember Josh Duffy auditioned for Revelation, and he didn't make the cut. I remember, and you know, as we do with any sort of rejection email, you know, we're just like, hey, you know, not that your audition was bad, of course, you know, just come back for another one, because you know, usually any cuts that we end up making to the cast on any of our casting calls, we're like, you know, please come back for another. It's never because they're bad, you know. It's because there aren't enough spots in the cast, and so you know, we encouraged him to come back. He came back for Time of Your Life, and he was excellent. So,
and I remember Time of Your Life was it's a story that's kind of a soap opera.
yeah, but if we could just quick run through the cast list here, and talk about, you know, maybe some of their casting stories and how they play their characters. Obviously, Brian here is the Doctor. I think he did an amazing job. Obviously,
I can talk about that quick if you want.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I approached Time of Your Life in a really stupid way. I approached doing it in a really dumb way. So basically, now I can essentially do like 20-page sessions if I want to. I figured that out a couple weeks ago, actually, that I have the willpower to do it. So that's what I'm going to start doing now. But at the time, I I wasn't doing that. Also, Colin Baker's voice, or at least my impression of his voice, is very hard to sustain for a couple hours on end. So I was only really doing Time of Your Life in short bursts because, as you can probably imagine, the Colin Baker voice is loud and is very hard on the vocal cords. And while I was doing this, you also have to keep in mind it was 90 degrees in my room because I didn't have air conditioning at that point, and it was the recording was actually god awful, and there were a couple times where I lashed out in anger at Jacob for how he adapted it in the recordings. Have you heard the recordings of those, Jacob?
I think I've heard bits of them. I have heard bits of them.
Okay, yeah. So there are a couple times where I'm just really, really mad at Jacob throughout the recordings. It's just, yeah. So Time of Your Life wasn't exactly a fun one for me to do. I'm enjoying Evolution much more, by the way. Even even though I've only got one part of it done as we're recording this, but yeah, no. Time of Your Life was a mess for me to record, and that's
But if I
why I don't actually.
sorry, go ahead.
I don't actually like my performance in this one.
See, no, okay, that's what I was going to say anyway. If I may interject, I think you're amazing. I really think you're amazing in this one.
The performance,
I think, like,
Brian, the performance is what sells it, because this is Doctor Who does soap opera plus commentary on the state of the show circa 1985.
I think
another
thing why I don't like my performance in this one is because Taya totally upstages me for.
No, that's a lie. You're both amazing. Shut up.
When I heard that towards
Brian, you it's because of the scene in part 4 that you are the absolute best. And Joey knows exactly what scene I'm talking about.
Yes, and actually, I guess, well, we already sort of started talking about Taya, I guess. But Taya auditioned for a ton of characters when she went into it, and needless to say, you know, if anyone who's heard all of her performances in the adaptations knows she's an amazing actress. And I've said to Jacob and Corey and Brian on many occasions I would cast her in anything. And we kind of did this time. We cast her in two very different roles because in addition to playing Angela, she plays Glinda, the secretary of Miriam Walker, and I love that too. She's great in everything she's in. What's up?
She is double cast in this one. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and yeah, she absolutely sells both. She's fantastic. Um, Dylan, of course, he has Raymond Day. He auditioned like anyone else. I think he auditioned for, was it Raymond? I think he auditioned for Dominic and maybe Dan Brooks. I want to say
He might
maybe
have
those were
done
his
Brooks,
roles.
and that was the one that I remember doing this because with Raymond Day, we had Joey and
Well,
kind of,
Dylan explained to us, his reasoning behind each of his auditions, and he explained to us that his Raymond Day voice. He was like, like the story, like Time of Your Life as a story is just one gigantic commentary on television, and Dylan's performance, without even knowing like what the story was about, he was like, his performance is both a parody of soap opera stars, but also in that way a commentary on soap opera stars and a commentary on soaps. So he was perfect for that role, and I think he's one of my favorite things about the story. I think he's fantastic.
I can't but help imagining Raymond Day as Lister from Red Dwarf for some reason. It's just that's what springs to mind immediately. I think that's sort of what Dylan was going for, but like I don't know, it's great. I love
drunk and an asshole.
Yeah.
So let's see. We found Christine Brillin for the first time. We've only worked with her once since. I'd love to have her in another story. She plays Mae Jordan. Really fun stuff there. These next two actually I want to talk about sort of together. So Avery auditioned for the story, and she ended up getting the role of Giselle. And just completely separate from all of that, we got an audition from someone named Alec Clark, and we ended up giving him the role of Jack Martin. Completely, like, I don't know, I guess it just flew over all of our heads at the time that they shared the same last name.
Well, okay,
and
if I may, audience, Security Kitchen Productions are run by a bunch of idiots. We will not realize you are related.
Yeah,
you have the same last name.
So all three auditioned completely separately, and they both got great roles. And Avery only told me afterwards, after the casting process was over, she's like, "Oh yeah," she's like, Alec is like reading through his lines, and she sent me like a video of him like just like reading out the script, and I was like, "Oh, this," I was like, "Oh, that's your brother." Oh wow, that's
Wait a
really
minute.
cool.
Did they plan that out together? Like I want to know the story behind this. Like,
No,
did they
I'm
just
pretty sure.
audition
Yeah, they
completely
both planned
separately
that they
and
wanted
only
to.
found out later that they were in the same story, or like, did they
Oh
sit
no,
down and
no.
be like,
No, because I think because Avery had been involved with the adaptation before, and she, I guess, had her brother listen to a few of them, and he was really into them. So so they both like. I guess they obviously both knew that they were both auditioning, but I think I obviously we didn't put it together, because they didn't send auditions together or anything. But yeah, no, I think that's it just kind of happened that way. I was very very pleased with that, how that turned
I
out.
also think, Joey, we need to talk about your performance. That's
oh my God, Joey's performance in that.
Because I remember we had talks about when we cast you as Zed Mantelli, and it was a precast.
It was a precast. Well, I remember early on when I was reading the Mystic Adventures, specifically the ones that I knew that we were doing adaptations for, because I started reading them about the same time that we were adapting the books. And I was like, oh, that's the role I want to do. I was like, I want to do Zed Mantelli. Completely like oblivious in my mind. I was like, how do I even want to play this role? I just know he's really fun and I want to play him, and I will decide on the rest later.
Well, I remember this is one of the few times where I think I gave you a couple of directions in a voice calls, not the recording lines, just saying, no, go over the top. Keep going. This dude is fake as hell.
And I like, as fun as Zed Mantelli is to play overall, and just doing that really just like over the top douchey persona that Zed Mantelli has. My favorite bits to do as Zed are the breakdowns that he has when the whole network starts to crash because he doesn't know what to do and he just starts freaking out and crying at the camera.
And it's the best. It's the best. It only works because
Joey,
this obvious mask breaks.
I must say, Joey, that I was very impressed by that, because when I was doing my lines in my room and reading the script along with it, I didn't think you would be able to pull that off. I was like, I cannot read this in Joey's voice. This does not seem like it's a role for him. Why is he doing this? And I sat down and listened to it, and I was like, oh my god, I love him. He's so good in this role.
I gotta say, I love playing the Doctor and all, and but the most fun I've ever had in the adaptations is playing Zed Mantelli. I will forever treasure this role. So, let's see. We already talked about Jacob as Grant. Oh yes. I forget if we talked about it last time. That Audrey Lombardo, who's been in a couple of the adaptations, is my aunt.
Because this was a time where and it still kind of happens. We don't get. If any of the audience listening is of the female gender, please audition. Please.
Well, no, because I don't think it was that this time. I think we got a female audition, but Miriam Walker is such a difficult role to cast. This because it's the Mary Whitehouse parody, and there's a Mary Whitehouse parody in this,
but it's not a cruel parody. Lyons isn't cruel with Walker.
A couple times he is. He goes a little far.
He jabs and he jabs, but she's still. He never makes her like, I'm a cackling villain.
I think
right.
Though one of my favorite Zed Mantelli scenes comes from the Miriam Walker confrontation when he's in the middle of the Raymond Day interview. I love that bit.
And she just walks the fuck in.
Wait a minute. It completely zoned out for a second. Is Miriam played by your aunt or someone else?
Yes, the one that played Mal Barker in Exodus.
That's Miriam Walker. Then I love her.
Let's see there. Anson Hammond is a fun role. We had someone else cast in the role originally who auditioned for the story. Forget the name escapes me right now. Tisha something, I think. You can see it in the original casting.
It was like Arbuthnot, I think. Was the last name.
I don't know. You can see it in the original cast announcement, and another fun example of a cast member ghosting us. So that's fun. So we got another one of our wonderful regulars, Elena Cole, to step in and do Anson Hammond, and she did an excellent job off of specifically an actor that I was very excited to bring back into the adaptations, the wonderful William Brown as Dan Brooks. Jacob, would you like to speak on this? Yellow?
Oh no, his mom came back.
Yes, no, let's talk about Will.
Yes.
Oh, Will. Okay, Will, I hope you're listening to this. I hope you are.
Will, you are one awesome guy, okay? I love you. I've actually met you now. You're such a nice person.
William Brown is one of the best people I've ever met. I will die on this hill.
He's a wholesome man.
But yeah, he just said he had fun. He's not even a Doctor Who fan. He's always wanted to get into it, but
this is the second adaptation he was in because he played Gilgamesh back in Genesis.
Yeah. So, but he had so much fun doing Gilgamesh. He was like, "Well, you've got this one coming up. I'll audition and I'll have time." And I mean, I would always cast him in anything because.
As would I.
But yeah.
So yeah, we also cast only one time in the adaptations actually. Although I think I can never tell. I see him on Twitter all the time. I don't know if it's the same guy. Maybe just a similar last name. I don't know. Jamie Shush, who plays Fern Carson in this.
Oh, he was really good.
He was really good.
He was really good. Again, it's the problem of I hate when this happens is that we have someone who will just do the one and they're really good and they never come back. And I'm just
who I want to get another adaptation? Back from Exodus, Finley Wade.
Finley
who played
Wade?
Popple.
Finley Wade?
Yeah,
Finley,
Finley
I'm
Wade.
active in Dylan's Discord server, Wade.
Yes, and I need to get him in another adaptation. I will get him in another one someday. He's so great. Let's see. Oh, Marcus. How is Marcus this far down the cast list?
Marcus, I remember because he's kind of a minor character. I want to talk about Marcus. So,
but
in scripting this, I put in a couple of references to an American soap opera that Joey took out.
Did you?
A nerd. Yeah, this is the one where I put in some Dark Shadows references in script directions.
No, but weren't they all in reference to Raymond?
They were in reference to Raymond. There was one in reference to Shepard that I used.
Oh, and you were talking about well, I remember the Sidney Newman reference. How he said Shepard was sort of like Sidney Newman in the script.
Yeah, he was kind of Sidney Newman. He was also just the way Marcus played him. I didn't even have to tell him any sort of Dark Shadows reference. He just took it, and I'm happy with that.
Nice. My favorite. My favorite is next. We got to get Corey Williams as Anjor. He's so good.
Okay, this was a precast. This is the we put Ark as every over the top character.
And I will still gladly every over the top character.
And whilst Corey Williams has stepped back from production things, the behind the scenes stuff, he is still acting for us.
Yeah, Corey was still helping us cast at this point. The only story that we're talking about today that he didn't help cast was Scales.
But he was in that one.
Yeah. He was still. I would love to have gotten him on this video, but he wasn't available.
Yes.
But yeah, I love him as Anjor. I love all of his scenes with Glinda later on when he comes in to save Glinda, and I think they're so much fun together.
I love him and Brian doing the whole
doing the
jungle.
I loved that. Yep. Loved that. Let's see. We already talked about Alec. Next we got Ian Arne, who was Stuart Ravel, Grant Markham's friend.
Oh no.
This is.
Hello?
This is.
Okay, I had something to say about Ark.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the only scenes of mine I thoroughly enjoy in this story, like my performance. I mean, I enjoy my scenes with Taya. It's just I enjoy Taya, not me. The only scenes I enjoy with myself in this story are the ones I get with Ark, because we're both playing really over-the-top characters, and I don't know, it's just really funny to listen to.
All right. Yeah, so Stuart Ravel, we have next played by the wonderful Ian Arne, who I think has been in almost every adaptation we've done, right?
Was he in Genesis?
No, he wasn't in Genesis, and I don't think...
No, he was in Exodus.
He wasn't in the first 3 Time Worm ones, but from Revelation on, I think he's been in every one.
Or he's been around for everyone. He might have missed one or two here and there.
Did he miss Time?
He might have.
Anyway, so he was Stuart, did an excellent job. Got killed by Dominic, unfortunately. Duffy we already talked about. I
will say this is we're getting to the point where these are characters who are very, very they're very, very small characters, but for a lot of them, the people who we cast in them have then come back a lot, and we love working with them. Sometimes we give them, especially with people like Josh Duffy, we give them small characters. I want to give them bigger characters, but yeah.
So anyway, we got Oliver Gustafsson, who cameoed in Revelation. We got him as Terry Marsden, who gets unfortunately killed by Raymond in the most soap opera way possible.
in the best way.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. And then I can't wait to talk about this next one because
yeah,
this
was this the
this is the
first for
first
him?
appearance of Caleb Hott as in Time of Your Life. So I
So
remember
I'm gonna say it. I was worried in casting Caleb.
So I think the only reason I was worried when we were casting Caleb was he was a really late audition, and
he made one
we,
stipulation about cursing.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, Caleb
is-
has his observations about swearing in the stories, and the New Adventures and Wrestling Adventures aren't known exactly for their family friendly nature. So no.
And he had okay. And I should say he had made this reservation known not in the audition, in like a text post before he had even sent in an audition.
Yeah.
So my fear was he was going to be a literal child.
Yeah, we were worried about casting, and it was a late audition, and we were like, oh, here, play the secretary. He's in one scene, but you can have a lot of fun with it. And he sent in his
it's a delicious little role. It's
so good. I love the little touches he threw into the one scene he has. And obviously,
it's exactly how I imagined when I adapted that scene. I think I put in a couple of emotion marks for that character.
I think, yeah. Well, I think what I love about his one scene in particular is, it's just the secretary being like, really like awful and sassy to Raymond Day, and like him like Raymond like ripping up the contract and the secretary being all like, oh, that doesn't matter, we still like basically own you. And it just had like this really fun.
Pulls out another copy of the contract. Just
that's right. Yeah. So great. Such a great scene, and Caleb totally sold it. And obviously, he made a very strong impression on us. Has he been in every adaptation since? I think.
Was he in Scales? He was in Scales.
Yeah, he was Yates.
Oh right, he was Yates. I forgot he was Yates. I don't. Was he? What was he? Has he not? I'm checking real quick. Has he been in? Is he in? He's not in Transit.
No, because
he
did the double casting with. Yeah,
he is in the pit.
Yeah, and that's the cast of Time of Your Life. Now this was the first story that.
Actually, you forgot someone, Joey.
Yes, my brother makes a small appearance. I'm aware.
Like he doesn't count.
He counts. He counts. Just he counts. So this is also the first story that we got Brian here to do the trailer.
Ooh, yeah, right. This is the first one I did the trailer for. Okay, let me talk about that real quick. So when I do trailers, I normally have like a good idea of how I want the trailer to go. Joey messaged me. I don't even know. It wasn't long before the trailer was due out. He was like, bro, in like a week, I need this trailer. And I was like, all right, cool. I wasn't expecting to make this, so I have no idea what I'm going to do.
It was not that short of a notice. Maybe 2-3 weeks.
It was I will say, Brian, you at least had 2 weeks.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. It's been 2020 was wild, and that was like back in. Was that? No, that was back in 2020.
No, it was back in 2019 that we did Time of Your Life, and that trailer was out in October.
Wow. Okay. So this is earlier than I thought. All right. Yeah. No. I had no idea what to do for it, and I was just like, well, I can't do like a really epic swooping, sort of fantasy score like a lot of Doctor Who fan trailers are, because that's not suited to this story. So I then explored the synthwave option I normally go for with the Virgin New Adventures. I was like, this isn't going to work either. And I was just sitting there and I was like, God, what am I gonna be able to do? And then I thought of like really, really cheesy movie trailers from the 80s. I was like, some of those have like really bad guitar riffs behind them. And that's where it sort of just spitballed from there that I was going to make this really, really shitty trailer for a TV movie from the 90s or 80s or something like that. Somewhere in that weird in between phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just kept rolling from there, and eventually I put in like the narration, the really bad narration, where I'm just like,
I love that bit. I love that.
it's meant to be bad. That's the point. It's meant to be terrible. Starring Brian Corrigan and Taya Van Dijk. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, that whole trailer was just like the icing on the cake with this whole story. And also, I just gotta say, like, during the editing process, I wasn't going through the best time mentally. It's, just things that I was dealing with IRL, the people I was interacting with. It wasn't very good for my mental health, and time of your life got me through a lot of that. It helped me so much. I've never laughed harder editing a story. It's the first time I've ever teared up editing a story with that last scene with the Doctor and Angela. It's an amazing story. I
made Joey. Hi, boys.
What?
Hi, boys. I did that shit. Hell yeah.
I can't. Jacob is pouring a drink over us. What are you saying, Brian?
I said I made Joey cry. Hell ye.
Maybe it wasn't exactly you, Brian.
Oh no, I know it's. I know. I am painfully aware that it is not me, Joey.
Yeah, and so that was Time of Your Life. So much fun. And now we move into our 2020 Hell World adaptations.
Yeah, the first one was before this all went crazy.
That's true. So Jacob, you got to adapt a Mark Platt novel.
I did, and I was okay. So approaching Cat's Cradle, just in general, was a completely different beast from Time Worm because it's not a story arc. It isn't. Like, the connecting thread is there is a silver cat that doesn't get really explained properly until Deceit. Like,
yeah.
6 books after the arc ends. So, and it starts out with Cat's Cradle times Crucible, which is, how do I describe it? Okay, so looms are a thing. This is the first book where they become a thing.
Very true.
Yeah, it's Mark Platt originally wrote the story for the Sixth Doctor and Mel. And the cat was going to be the Doctor's cat badge that came to life. Instead, it's sort of a protoplasm of the TARDIS. And really, what was hard is that this is Mark Platt at his perhaps most trippy. Like, let's be honest. Like,
oh yeah. Like, honestly, this is probably like the Mark Platt, like the trippiest Mark Platt story that makes sense, like complete sense. I think.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. It's just it's trippy, and it's very much, you could tell this was meant for TV. So like,
I think it's also a Mark Platt that was very aware of his reputation as the confusing guy after Ghostlight, and just sort of like kept going with that.
And I think we had quite a few just challenges just scripting this. The first episode itself has so much visual stuff, so I came onto the idea that the idea is that like everything Ace sees is getting like louder and brighter and crazier. So I kind of took that, transformed it into an audio idea where the sounds just aren't stopping when they should, and it keeps going until eventually you reach the breaking point of silence. Like, this is one where sound was an idea here. And then we eventually get to the actual setting of the story, which is inside the TARDIS, partially inspired by the surrealist mind of Kurt Vonnegut.
And
we
the
are
TARDIS is inside out, and it's just all kinds of insane. There's this Mercury River that flips between time zones. You're constantly traveling between the past and the present and the future, and you have multiple versions.
It's a nice point where Ace is the normal character here.
Right.
Ace is the normal one.
I remember script editing this one was awful. And I remember, like, by the time I was done script editing Times Crucible, I finished it and I was like, Jacob, I have a really bad feeling about this story. I got really scared at the end of script editing because I was like, the book already didn't make a ton of sense. And the script editing made it slightly easier, but I was still terrified to bring this together because editing it was going to be awful. Like, once I had everything together, the only thing that was going to save it in my mind was going to be if we had an absolutely stellar cast that understood the story, and even if they didn't, they were going to have fun with their roles.
It's like you have to push it.
And then casting started, and I was terribly happy. So this was me as the Doctor, Georgia Spencer still as Ace, and Caleb Hott auditioned again, and this time we gave him the cover credit role of Vale, and oh, I love him. He's amazing. He really is. Yeah, he's one of my favorite things about the story. He just sells.
Let's just say, casting this story had some of the hardest decisions ever that we had to make, and we'll get to why eventually.
I imagine it was just like a really, because I wasn't involved with the casting except for maybe one part, but even then, not the actual casting. I imagine it was just really stressful anyway, because, like you said, the cast had to be good. Like, you couldn't really have had.
They really sell the story.
Like,
and when we said the cast had to be good, that meant when we saw an audition from someone who had already been in a story before, we were on it, analyzing every bit, thinking of what they can do, because we need to know.
Yeah. So, like I said, Caleb is Vale, fantastic. Just totally sells that, like, snivelly little bastard that Vale is. I think he's fantastic.
Because Vale is one of the few characters who, when aging up, he doesn't actually change at all. Like,
yeah. Brian, you play Shanzi in this, which we precast, and we did that because Shanzi was the main character that had to switch around a lot between older and younger. Because when he's younger, he's an actual child, and when he's when he's older, he's a teenager. So we had to wanted someone that was able to that was one of our regulars that, like, if you had a question about what voice to do in a particular scene, I could be like, oh yeah, it was just easier for communication to be like, okay, this is what voice you need to do here, this is what you need to do here.
I have played a child, and I am an angsty teenager. So
yeah. So best of both worlds. You also, I see you credited here as policeman, and I just remember why that happened, because Avery, we got in this story, and Avery didn't audition, but we were like, Avery, could you please do this? We're low on female auditions. We really need someone to fill these roles. And they were Chessborough and a policewoman. And eventually, I think maybe, I mean, I know it wasn't because we had asked her behind the scenes, because I think ever since, I don't think she's ever auditioned for a project. It's always been like, Avery, can you do this role? And she's been like, yes. So I think it just happened to land at a bad time for her recording, and she wasn't able to get the lines in. She had to drop out, so we ended up splitting that between Brian and we brought Lily Mae Sherrod in, who played Emily Hutchings in Revelation, and she ended up playing Chessborough.
Speaking of, like, issues with recording, I think other than Exodus, because I know I was late on Exodus, I think this is the only other one I've been late on. Both times were because I was in another play and, like, really struggling with time balancing.
Makes sense. Next up, we had another Taya Van Dijk audition. And I don't know why we were really obsessed with, I guess, double casting Taya at the time because we really enjoyed working with her.
No, it's because we didn't get enough female auditions. This one we did not get enough female auditions.
That's true. That's true. So she plays the Pythia and Amnon. I was really happy with her Pythia performance, specifically towards the end when the Pythia starts going insane and she kills herself. I love that whole bit there. She's fantastic, especially off of one of my favorite castings in this story. Zach Rosenfeld is the other. He plays the other in this, because we sort of went off the idea that the other should take on the form of William Hartnell, and since Zach played our first Doctor, we have him
but
do
the idea was not to do the other as William Hartnell as the first Doctor, the other as William Hartnell as the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So literally just like the idea being that the other has William Hartnell's appearance, but he's not the first Doctor. He doesn't have the first Doctor's mannerisms. He's a totally different character, just the appearance of Bill Hartnell. So it was more behind the scenes thing, behind the scenes things of us being like, oh, Zach played our first Doctor, so he would be our hypothetical Bill Hartnell here. So he has some great scenes with Taya as the Pythia. They're fantastic together. We got Nathan Beatty in as Peccary. Other Timescape crew members include
Peccary's the captain, and
yes,
Nathan Beatty. I think this was the first time we ever. He was in Genesis. Yeah.
He was in all of them except for Apocalypse and Time of Your Life up until this point, because he was
right.
And
but this was the first time where we gave him the leader role.
Yeah, and he did a great job, I think.
So the rest of the time,
what's up?
Is that who plays that guy? Because I can't remember the character's name, even though you probably just said it.
Peccary,
yeah. Jeez, I had no idea.
Yeah, he was our Hemmings, and King Aga. Yeah, he was fantastic.
He was Hemmings either.
The dude has range. The dude has.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so the Timescape crew includes Peccary, Chesborough, Amnani, Shanzi, Vale, and then lastly, this is the first project we ever did with Bobby Shadow as Regis.
And interestingly, this is one of two new cast members in this one who only auditioned because they found us through YouTube, and commented.
Can I just say my favorite line from myself in this story is, "Not again, Regis!"
I feel like you yell that line like 5 times in the story because everyone's always screaming at Regis.
They are.
Yeah, they are. Regis is worse. Regis is just an ass that doesn't trust anyone.
Regis.
Not again, Regis. So that's our Timescape crew, and lastly here, or sorry, next up I should say, Marcus Cotton plays the Process.
Oh,
who would like to talk?
My God!
Oh, Marcus.
I struggle between this and Saul as my favorite Marcus Cotton role.
It's this one. It's this one because, dude, it's this one. Wait, but it has to be this one.
Yes, you're probably right. Because I remember when we were doing the casting call, we had originally said, well, we're casting the young Process and the old Process as 2 separate characters, or at least as 2 separate actors playing 2 different versions of the character. And Marcus's auditions, I remember he auditioned for Rassilon, and then he auditioned for both the young and old Process. And we were like, you know what? Marcus is just that good, isn't he? And
it's a switch. He flips the switch,
and he just does it. And he cast him as both the young and old Process, and really it makes this wonderful unified character. And he did a fantastic job.
Okay, so I have a question about that because I don't hear the raw stuff. during that, when he was doing that, did he send the files for both characters as separate files, or did he like send them as one
No.
file?
He recorded it all. It was all one file, and he kept switching back and forth between the two voices. I
The
just had to
man
splice
flipped
them.
on a switch.
It's so good.
He's just that good. And my absolute favorite thing about the process as a character is it is not just the two voices that make the process. Marcus also sent in this wonderful bit early on, where he made this sort of like clicking. He called it a predator noise, and it was that early on scene when the process is first trying to break through the walls of the TARDIS. And I listened to that, and I was like, Marcus, can you send me like just a full track of that? I want to use that for the process just moving, and for like every single move the process makes, it's going to be this cool like clicking. You want to like feel that movement of the worm, but like with every single line that he has, and that sound should always sort of be there creeping up on you. And he just sent like a full like minute or two of him making that sound, and the process as a character, although I edited it, is 100% Marcus. No sound effect I added was not him.
Yeah, everything was him.
I can't praise him enough. What's up?
He makes that noise with his voice.
Yes.
What?
This is literally he did it live. He did it live, and we put it in.
So we proved that you can do Times Crucible on TV. It's all just one guy.
It is one dude.
So, and as if I wasn't excited enough, our next cast member was our first project we ever did together with Michael Gibbons, who auditioned for Rassilon, and of course, he got Rassilon.
Now, casting Rassilon was fun. When Gibbons, Michael Gibbons, I only found out he was Australian recently.
Yeah, Michael Gibbons is Australian, apparently.
Okay.
I can't get over. Okay, I just want to take a moment before you continue with that story, Jacob. Like, I can't get over the amazing people we work with. Like, I'm sure it comes across in my sheer excitement of how I talk about these projects, but the people that we work with are just astounding, and they find new ways to impress me every single day. Sorry.
Michael Gibbons. We got the audition. He was a middle audition, and Rassilon. We knew Rassilon was going to be a hard character to cast,
and of course, like all of our male auditions were for Rassilon because it's a big character. It's a
known character. It's a character that people know.
Yeah. So.
Can I this one?
Okay, let's not tell the story, but just leave it at we got a less than favorable audition for the role of Rassilon.
Let's just say, if you audition for a role and do not get said role, do not block Joey Morgan.
Don't. And then ask Jacob Licklider. Do not block Joey Morgan, and then ask Jacob Licklider when he can be cast in the next project.
We do not cast people just based on I want to be in.
Well, also number 3, do not shit talk Joey Morgan and Jacob Licklider after they say no, because then you have to deal with me.
And that is the Cliff Notes. That is the Cliff Notes version of the first person we ever blacklisted. On with the show.
Second person.
Second?
Elias the Gay was the first blacklist.
See, but that wasn't under me, so that doesn't count.
Right. This is the first blacklist under Joey. I will also say, we knew, hearing Michael Gibbons audition, we knew that's Rassilon. It's done.
Yeah.
We don't need to hear anymore.
Yeah. Rassilon has a whole ass page-long monologue, and just
and it's not shouty Rassilon from Five Doctors.
Yeah, and that was the thing that we wanted to specify in the casting call. Is that it's not Timothy Dalton. This isn't Don Warrington. You know, this is a Rassilon before all the bad shit happens.
This
and
is
he's just
baby Rassilon. This is the story where Rassilon gets fucked up.
Yeah, he's a distinguished figure at this point, and at the end, his life is ruined. And God, that's another one of my favorite scenes in this. When
His life and his entire planet are ruined, and he's trying to pick up the pieces.
Rassilon his carriages because of the Pythia's curse. Like, oh, everyone in that scene. Like, I love Gibbons' performance. You know, it's totally broken, and I love Rosenfeld. You know, as the other sort of looming over Gallifrey's history. It's just gorgeous.
And I will say, putting in Zach Rosenfeld as the other, Zach Rosenfeld, he did a Hartnell voice, but he didn't do the first Doctor. I cannot stress this enough. That's what makes this work. That it is.
That scene was so good. That actually, all of Time's Crucible is really good. Can I just say that? Like, that's probably my favorite time to one of our novel adaptations. Because you know what, Joey, I'm convinced that is your best performance as the Doctor, hands down. I love you in that shit.
Really?
And like, it's like the sound design really sells it. The cast is stellar. And like your choice of music is it's just great.
Wait, what music did you use for that? I can't remember.
Huh?
I can't remember what music.
I know you used something from stuff by Andy Hardwick and Toby Robinson.
Yeah, you did. You used a bunch of Daughter of the Gods.
I did use Daughter of the Gods, didn't I? Yeah, that was one of them. And then there was another. Yeah.
I also think you used Lugaru. I think you used Lugaru.
I did not. No, I used Lugaru back in Genesis and a bit of Revelation.
Or was it Primeval? You might have used Primeval.
Primeval. I also used this.
I used Primeval for Genesis.
Yeah. Anyway, so playing Rassilon's servant Thrift, we had Joshua Duffy. We got one of our good friends, Mary Sharp, in to do Loie and Sathralope. This was the first project we did with Dawn Swasson. She was one of the servants of the Pythia. And Corey Williams, we got only in for a brief appearance as a physician serving the Pythia. And we have my sister, Lily Morgan, as Innocent. Get some cheeky Lungbearer references in there.
Lungbearer references that were in the original book, and Joey wanted me to cut them originally.
I did not. That's a lie.
You did. You told me cut them.
I didn't tell you to cut them. I remember I laughed because you kept in all the Lungbearer references, but I didn't tell you to cut them.
Look, I'm not gonna not keep in all the Lungbearer references.
Brian, anything to say on the trailer for this one?
Oh yeah. So just like this is my favorite story that we've done, it's also my favorite trailer that I've done. I am in love with the trailer for this. And it's not often that I say that, because a lot of the time when I finish a trailer, I'm really like sick of hearing the music, or like I'm just sort of like with the end result. This is definitely my favorite one that I've done. I think
you know what I just realized?
Pace of it right with the music. I think I got the urgency to match the music really well. I just really like how everything about the story, including like the supplemental materials, just came together. It's really good stuff.
I just realized something about the channel that happened with Time of Your Life.
What?
This is the Time of Your Life and Time's Crucible, the first two stories produced as Security Kitchen Productions.
That is true. Although Time of Your Life was cast under Joey Morgan. That was right before it started releasing. We transitioned into Security Kitchen Productions. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Huh. Also, weirdly enough, I would argue both of these adaptations, at least script-wise, I think, maybe hot take, I don't know if anyone here agrees with me, I think they're both better than the book. I think they're just a bit sharper, and were helped by adaptation.
Definitely for Time of Your Life, because for Time of Your Life, I cut out that Doctor Who fan wink wink nudge nudge subplot.
Yes, the Time Riders, the fan club, yeah.
Like, I kept Time Riders as a thing, as because but like I cut that. The
Because
ending is different because the book
character
just
is
keeps that final chapter of that book just keeps going, and I'm like, we've already had the climax, Steve.
And honestly, like, I think Test Crucible just worked better on a performed media. I
It does.
think,
You can tell this was meant to be on television.
yeah. And honestly, same
Reading
goes
the
for
book.
Time of Your Life. I think Time of Your Life just works better as a performed story. So, yeah, I think that about does it for Times Crucible. Let's move on to Warhead now. The second book of the Cat's Cradle arc, Cat's Cradle Warhead. Jacob, what was scripting that like?
Scripting this one was always going to be really hard. This was a tough one because Andrew Cartmel is a brilliant writer. Like the man knows what he is doing. He knows what he's doing. He has a tendency to have every scene be important.
I kind of disagree with that. I don't think everything's important. I actually reread the book fairly recently. I don't think everything's important in it. Like, we cut a lot of the Ace stuff.
Yeah.
At least
Well, okay.
he
has everything. Everything is somehow is important, but he makes every little incidental character that you only meet once memorable.
And they also like mean something later on, like some character that you hear about early on, and then you meet them once, and then later on you hear that like they died from some horrible accident. It's full of characters like that, and a lot of Cartmel scenes that he writes involve these one-off characters, and so that doesn't make casting that doesn't make adaptation
that doesn't make adapting easy because you cannot keep all of these one-off characters for one scene.
Yeah,
I kept the big one, the big important one, that being Maria Chavez, in very very early on. This is also a book where not only does it tell a complete story and is perfect at doing that, it also has so much setup for when you get, because this was when I adapt, I reread the book, and for a lot of these books, it's the first time I've reread them since my initial reading through the VNAs 4 or 5 years ago now. And on reread, you realize how much is being set up for Warlock and then Warchild.
Yeah.
So I needed to
so
make sure.
You need to keep some of these one-off characters, specifically in the form of Mrs. Woodcock.
Mrs. Wood. I was never, even if I didn't know, I was never going to cut Mrs. Woodcock. She is too fun.
So I will say though, adaptation may have been difficult for this one, but in the end, us turning this into a 3-part story, I think the book really lends itself to a 3-act structure.
It does. And what's interesting, what's even more interesting, reading the book, this is the first Doctor Who novel that doesn't feel like a TV story.
Am I allowed to disagree?
In terms of format, like, it doesn't feel like someone took a TV outline and put it into book form.
No. I was mainly disagreeing to the thing that Joey said before that.
Structure?
This one's really hard. Probably because I haven't read the book and I wasn't involved with the scripting, but for some reason, Warhead was really hard for me to wrap my head around. Just like all of it, I was a little confused when I listened to it. Is all I'm saying. It's probably a me thing, but when I listened to it, I was lost.
So okay, so maybe I can break down the 3-act structure of Warhead if that will help at all. because part one, you're mostly following the Doctor. You meet up with Ace at the end and you find out where she's been, but you're mostly following the Doctor, and he's sort of collecting he's putting together this random assortment of pieces. These pieces being people and things that they have, information on the Butler Institute. You slowly meet our villain in the form of Matthew O'Hara, but you're mostly following the Doctor, and you know that he's building some kind of weapon, but you don't meet the two main pieces of this weapon because that's what part two is all about. You meet Vincent and Justina. It's all about building those characters. The only four speaking roles in part two that are like named in the cast are the Doctor, Ace, Justine, and Vincent, and that's how, and that's how you really finish like the assembly of the Doctor's weapon. So the book actually is split up into two parts. The first part is the bulk of it, which ended up being episodes 1 and 2 of our adaptation, and then part two. So part one is called Assembly in the book. Part two is called not Detonation. Is it Detonation? Maybe. But that's what ended up being episode 3 in our adaptation, and that's where it all comes together. You realize all these pieces that the Doctor was gathering early on, what they're all leading up to. You realize what Vincent and Justine's role is, and you realize how Matthew O'Hara plays into it as the villain of it all. And I think it works really well. Like it seems like this random assortment of set pieces on the surface, but I think there's a lot more there to the story. And
It does.
Really
Okay, so my issue was I didn't put on my big brain cap. I just tried being like, I'll listen to it while I do dishes.
Yeah, here's the thing. Well, it's the thing about the VNAs. The VNAs, really, from the end, from Time Worm Revelation forward, they set themselves apart as we are not just going to do standard Doctor Who. We are going to do things that are too broad and too deep for the small screen.
Quite.
Because this is this is a very political story. It is unabashedly political. It takes place in an
Doctor Who was saying save the planet long before Chris Chibnall took over, friends.
Yeah, well, this one's also just anti-corporatist, anti-capitalist in a lot of ways, and I think that translated over really well. It also very much deconstructs the idea of the Doctor as this scientific figure.
I think if we're allowed to start slowly moving into the cast, I want to talk a bit about my Doctor performance and the Doctor's role in the story, because I think this is the darkest I've ever seen the Doctor in any singular story. Period. Like the man is an angel of death. Seriously, he comes in on people's lives.
Yeah, this is a story where the Doctor shows up.
He imparts some kind of judgment. He imparts some kind of judgment. If he doesn't think that they're doing some sort of greater good for the world, they die off screen.
Even if they are doing some greater good for the world, they die. Srila, you have the character of Srila, who is
any past mistake that they've made is bad in the Doctor's eyes. Anyone that was complacent to the bad going on in the world, like Maria Chavez, is bad in the Doctor's eyes. They didn't do enough to get us out of the situation that we are currently in. And I love that. But my God, that's terrifying. And as such, this is probably my favorite Doctor performance that I've done so far. I love this one. I love doing the Wilby stuff in Time's Crucible, and I love the Doctor's moralizing in Revelation, and I love being the Reich Inspector General in Exodus. But this, I loved digging my heels into truly dark, messed up Sylvester McCoy territory, and so many great scenes in this.
What inspired my take on the trailer for this? I know we're sort of doing this one a bit out of order compared to the other ones, but I want to talk about this real quick because that's a really nice segue. My trailer for this, I knew I wanted to be different from the other two I had done, because the other two I had done had been really sort of high energy, intense. I wanted to do something a bit more slow and sludgy, because although I didn't read through the entire script because I'm not actually in Warhead a lot, based on what I did read, which was the first part, this story was really, really bleak. and it wasn't something that was sort of a high energy story. I knew this one was probably going to be a bit more character centric, which it is, and I wanted to sort of bring it down a notch, I guess, from the other two. So I scoured the internet for a synth track that sort of embodied that and just went ahead. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out.
And I'll also say, scripting this one, Cardinal never puts a date on it. I specifically decided to, because we knew this was going to be going out around 2020, I went 12 years after 2020 for a very specific reason. Because in 2030 is the projected date where man-made climate change will no longer be reversible completely, and we will be past the point of no return. This story is 2 years after that.
Hurrah!
It's bleak.
It's a little bleak, yeah. It's kind of dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I made the trailer like I did.
Yeah, the whole thing is really messed up, and not much room for fun in this one. But man, I kind of love it. I really love it.
It was fun. It was fun to produce because, well, I think we'll segue into the cast.
Let's segue into the cast. So we have me as the Doctor, obviously. We sort of precasted a trio of the American guys guarding the barrel with Vincent in it, as me, Jacob, and Brian here. Me being Calvin, Jacob is which one are you, Sean, and Brian was Guthrie. And
if I had realized early on enough that you had done that, because I didn't realize you had done that, I would have used my normal voice for. Did I play Guthrie?
Yeah, you played Guthrie. Yeah. Well, no, because I gave you specific instructions for Guthrie. So like, it wasn't meant to be like the three of us doing like a trio of dummy Americans. No, like, it was these are like three like actual characters. So I gave you specific instructions.
Yeah.
On
the trio of dummy Americans that happens in transit.
Yeah. So Brian, you also play Bobby Prescott. Which is honestly one of my favorite performances you've ever done.
You did that as the sneak peek, didn't you?
I did. The scene, the scene between the Doctor and Bobby, which is again one of my favorite scenes I've ever done with the Doctor. One of my favorite scenes in the adaptations. I love it. I love the Doctor's judgment on Bobby. I love Bobby. I love Bobby's. What's up?
I think that's my favorite scene that I've done with you.
Yeah, I'm very happy. We don't get many one-on-one scenes, do we, Brian?
Huh?
We don't get many one-on-one scenes, do we?
No, we don't get many one-on-one scenes. But I think that's definitely my favorite one that I've done with you.
Yeah. I'm very happy with that one. I love the whole oh god, what is one of my favorite lines? The lead into it is the Doctor doing the whole like, why do you kill them, Bobby? And Bobby Prescott, and Bobby's like, oh, who cares? And the Doctor sort of like gets all up in his face and says, is it because they're different? Like, I love that. So the scene is just filled with lines like that just really hammer home the point.
Funny story about that. I was really pleased with that performance, so I posted it to my Instagram, which is private, and one of my actory friends, and they were just like, Jesus Christ, you sound like you're gonna shoot up a school.
Which is kind of who the character is.
Yeah, Bobby Prescott is kind of a school shooter, huh?
It's Andrew Cartmell's big defense of television and video games is basically who the character is.
Yeah.
It's younger viewers may not realize this. Well, you might, because it still happens. There's the whole idea that video games will make you shoot up a school, and books are the pure form of media. Bobby Prescott is that turned on the head. Like, Bobby is this guy.
Like, yeah, he is like, I hate to keep saying it, but he's the school shooter character. But he specifically hates kids that that do play video games and do get like they don't read books and they don't get any of their learning from textbooks or anything. And everything is like performed and has pictures and it's all done on video screens and it's and that's what Bobby
Prescott is like a shiny Pokemon.
Well, here. Let me read you from the script. Let me read you from the script how I described him, because this is one of my favorite character descriptions. Bobby Prescott is a teenager obsessed with books who just got out of a fight and ran into the library. He's also insane. Very, very insane.
Look, Bobby Prescott. Okay, like I was saying, he's the shiny Pokemon of school shooters. You know, he's like the ultra rare breed. Everyone else does it because, you know, they're an incel and they play video games. This guy does it because he's an incel and he loves to fucking read.
I feel insulted, Brian.
God. Okay, we're gonna move on. So unfortunately, although we didn't know it at the time, this was our last story with Georgia Spencer as Ace.
And
so
I will say, I wish Georgia well. She is amazing. And I hope we can work with her again in the future.
This sort of goes into our Witchmark talk, but I just want to talk about at least about the end of the Georgia Spencer stuff because it was towards the end of Warhead editing, I believe. I know I was done with Warhead editing. It was towards the end of Warhead release, and I was still waiting on Ace Witchmark lines. And I was like, Georgia, please, we need the Witchmark lines. I really need the Witchmark lines, Georgia. Please. I'm 3 weeks behind on editing because I don't have your Witchmark lines, Georgia. And then she messages both of us one day with the same exact message, basically saying, nope, can't. I'm stepping down from the role. It doesn't mean I won't come back at some point, just not as Ace. And that was that. We'll get into our recasting of Ace for the next story. But for now, that's where our Georgia Spencer Ace story ends. And yeah, it's sad. You know, I do wish that she had at least stayed on for Witchmark because at least then we have the gap of the other adaptations in between done by Big Finish. You know, we have the Sophie Aldred Bridge, and then we could bring it back as New Ace with a recast. But that's not how productions like these work. You know, you can't predict these things happening.
It isn't.
Yeah, it's a shame. But I do think she gave a great last performance. You know, even though none of us knew at the time it would be her last performance. I think she's great in this story. Then we have, again, Taya Van Dijk, who we seem to not be able to shut up about this video, who we originally cast as two characters. She was playing Justine and Tessa Mancuso. And I remember one day, I got a message from Taya saying, hi, I can't do lines right now, and I don't think I'll be able to in the near future. I'm going to drop out altogether. And I said, please don't. Please. For the love of God, please don't. And I was like, at the very least, can you at least keep one of the roles? I don't care which. It'll just be way easier to pass off one role than a double cast to someone else. And she said, okay. She said she was going to keep Justine, and I was like, okay, fine, awesome, that'd be great.
Which is good because Justine is a character she clearly had more fun with.
Oh yeah, and Justine is also just such a Taya Van Dijk role. Yeah, she's fantastic. But then Tessa Mancuso, I left in the hands of Jacob. And you.
Well, somehow I find I had a friend who knew of Doctor Who, wished to help out. Danny Hansen, who is amazing. We would have you back, Danny. Anyone we've cast, we would gladly have back. That should go without saying.
Most definitely. Unless we cast you and you ghosted us. But yeah, go on.
Yes. Unless you ghost. Anyone we've had, and you were in the story, and it was released.
Gotta catch them all. There's Danny Phantom. Gotta catch them all because they're Danny Phantom.
So, Danny. Danny
and she played Tessa. That was great, yeah. Then we also got another new actor to play Vincent. He did an excellent job, Joseph Decker.
Wait a minute, wasn't Joseph Decker in Exodus?
No.
No?
No, he wasn't.
It wasn't?
He wasn't. I don't know who you're thinking of.
Who am I thinking of?
I have absolutely no clue, Jacob.
Do you remember the role you're thinking of?
No. The name just sounds really familiar for some reason.
Joseph Deck. This is his first, and so far, any time that he's worked with us, he played Vincent and did a great job at that. We have Ian Arne back, of course, probably in our biggest role we've ever given. I was so happy with his Matthew O'Hara performance. Yeah, perfect for the main villain of this piece. He has some great monologues later on that I think Ian just absolutely killed.
I will say for Justine and Vincent, casting that roles were those roles were scary.
Why, Jacob?
Because Joey, this is
why, Jacob?
This is the VNA where sex happens.
Shut the fuck up.
It is. This is the first one where we go adult.
Hold on, dude, scene slapping ass, banging, dicking. Okay,
Brian, you're going over the top.
Okay, so yes, so we kept the sex scene in for the first time. Actually, this is, I mean, not even really. Like, no, it's implied sex. And it
I will say, the only
It-
reason we cut the sexual content from Genesis is because it's terrible.
we made
what,
them
Brian?
moan.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
Brian, you're turning into the chaotic one here. Stop,
Brian,
please.
you're lucky. I haven't forced any actor to make any sexual sound.
It's clickbait, God.
Jesus. But no, yeah, we kept that. I mean, it is harmless. It is.
Well, it's a gut punch of a scene for Ace.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the scene between Justine and Ace that precedes it. And we made the scene slightly more acceptable than it is in the book, because how old is Vincent in the book?
Vincent is like 12.
No, he's not 12.
What?
He's like 13. Oh, he's like 13 or 14, I think.
How old is the lady?
I think Justine's meant to be like 17 or 18.
Yeah.
So we fixed the book by slightly upping Vincent age and casting an actor that sounded slightly older than 13 or 14. So I think we helped out of
What did you get up to in your youth? My God.
So yeah, moving on. We had Lilith Williams as Stephanie, an actor that I would love to work with again. Marcus Cotton played Mulray in this, did a fantastic job. Second and so far only other project that we did with Christine Brilliant. She played Breen in this. I loved her performance in this one. Honestly, I think I actually preferred her in this one than I did in Time of Your Life. She was great in that.
Yeah.
We had Audrey Lombardo again, my aunt, as Maria Chavez and Mrs. Kalowski. I loved her Maria Chavez, actually.
Yeah, that scene is the gut punch.
Yes, I'm very happy with how that one turned out. Oh yes, this one had actually had a very very old, long time family friend and an instructor of mine, Joelle Whitner, as Mrs. Woodcott, and she did an excellent job in that role. Let's see. Caleb Hott played Patrick O'Hara. Played a very convincing. How old is Patrick supposed to be? Like 5 or 6?
5. He's 5.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
5. And I remember casting this one. We said we weren't gonna make Brian play another child.
Oh my
And
God.
Because
With Bobby Prescott.
Bobby Prescott is a teenager. There's a difference.
Let's see. Then we had let's see. Oh yes. This is our first work with Lyran Lelenhart. I think that's how you say her last name. She was Shrila in this, and again, love that scene mostly because of the doctor and what the doctor has to say in the scene. But yeah, she did a fantastic job. Oh, Jacob.
This is our introduction to Mason Peters.
Mason Peters. Yes, he plays Peterson in this, and
yes.
You go ahead.
Mason is very special because he was the first person to basically say, "Hey, I'm reading the VNAs." Shoei does these podcasts where he talks about the VNAs. I want on said podcast. So we got him on the podcast. We made sure he knew about the novel adaptations. And this is his favorite VNA.
And he auditioned, and we gave him the role of Peterson. And I have since dubbed Mason my resident techie nerdy sounding guy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He really can do that techie nerdy thing, and
really
not just be doing Richard Iowade.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like an actual like tech geek, like really just fun, charismatic IT guy. I think he really sells it. Yeah, he did a great job.
Bobby Shadow was in this.
Is James McElveen,
which is a interesting role. Interesting role because in the book he has one line.
That he does,
and that is his death screams.
Yes. So instead, we made. I remember in the book, it's when McElveen's mind is in the computer, he's just like sending them messages. So in this one, we made it like a voice interface.
A voice interface, which I think works better. It makes you it makes the character feel more like a character.
It also helps Mancuso's reaction to McElveen being back a bit more believable. Yeah. One time only appearance of Luke Fox, who played Jack Blood, and I think he did a great job. Corey Williams we had as Lewis Christian in this. And lastly, this is also the novel adaptation's debut of Connor Mallet.
Was this his first?
This was his first, yep, and he plays the child Brody, who the Doctor teaches to use a slingshot, and that's
causes a little chaos.
Can I just make a quick note real quick? I auditioned for Jack Blood. Have either of you seen The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy?
Yes.
All right. I couldn't stop imagining Jack Blood as Hoss Delgado for some reason. No idea why. That's the image that popped into my head. So when I auditioned for him, I went for that.
Fair enough. All right. I guess that about does it for Warhead. I think that covers everything. Let's move on to Cat's Cradle Witchmark. So, Jacob, scripting the worst of the Cat's Cradle arc. What was that like?
If any of our projects turned into an absolute fever dream because of COVID-19, it was Witchmark.
This one felt like a fever dream.
Did Witchmark ever happen? Did Witchmark ever really happen, Jacob?
I mean, I guess it did. I pulled up the video. I remember listening to it. I will say, okay, Cat's Cradle Witchmark is a book that wants to be Doctor Who does a fantasy novel, but it also wants to be Doctor Who does an original fantasy novel that isn't inspired by Tolkien or Celtic mythology.
Yeah, there are Tolkien references in the book.
Yet, it is almost exclusively inspired by Tolkien and Celtic mythology. Which, I'm going to say this, and I'm, if you allow me just a little bit of a ranting space to put on my fantasy nerd hat, because I read fantasy.
Keep it brief, my friend.
I will be a little brief. This was Cat's Cradle Witchmark was published in 1992, right? I think. Yeah. So we are in 1992. By 1992, we already had 3 books of the Wheel of Time. Fantasy had changed from just Tolkien, and this feels like it is stuck in the past. And we've also had, a ton of Discworld out, like the first, I think 15 Discworld books would have been published by this point by Terry Pratchett. Fantasy.
It's weird though, Jacob. I think I think you have like a more unique perspective on fantasy than most fantasy fans, because didn't you only just read Lord of the Rings for the first time this past year?
That was no. Was it just this last year? It might have just been this last year.
Either it was late 2019 or early 2020. Like it was
I
right
think it was
around
late
there.
2019. This is the first time I read it all the way through. I had read The Hobbit before. I had read The Hobbit more than once because The Hobbit is amazing. But yeah. I as a fantasy fan, I did not read Lord of the Rings until very recently, and I love it. Partially because Tolkien's storytelling has become, for a long period of time, was just it was just fantasy. It was just rehashes of Tolkien. Cat's Cradle Wishmark should not have been a rehash of Tolkien, and it also has this terrible problem of using established fantasy creatures, but not calling them established fantasy creatures. Like,
but instead naming them after some other
established fantasy creatures, like the Firbolg and the She, which are the She are a type of Fae. That's like that's what they are. The Kethel, which are centaurs.
Oh,
Jacob.
It's like The Walking Dead and walkers instead of just calling them zombies.
So Jacob, I hate to break it to you, but we kind of have a whole podcast where we talked about the problems with Witchmark. I think we're just talking about the adaptation here.
We do. So, I'm sorry. I will rein it in.
So I think we spoke last time on our last novel adaptations retrospective, where we talked about the different kinds of adaptations that we do. And this is one of like our favorites to do, which we call the Cleaver Adaptation, or I at least call it the Cleaver Adaptation.
Oh, it's the Cleaver. I have introduced the cast to the term the Cleaver Adaptation.
You did it very recently at the time of recording this, and I love that. But you introduced the Cleaver Adaptation, where Jacob just takes out a meat cleaver and utterly demolishes a book to make a nice, sweet, simple 50-minute 2-part story. And that's exactly what we did with Witchmark. And we cut, I swear, like half the characters.
This is a book where there are 4 characters called a variation of Hugh.
So we kept 3 of those Hughs, though.
Because we had to.
Hugh and there's Embers Hughes, because they're all important, except for Selwyn Hughes, who's dead by the start of the book, but he's still there in the book. So, lots of cuts had to be made to this story, obviously. And that made casting pretty easy for us, because this is one where we decided, usually with the Cleaver Adaptations, we decide to just precast the whole thing with our regulars and people that we've had in adaptations before. So
or people who auditioned with the last audition and maybe didn't get in, because that happened with Apocalypse,
the Pit, yeah,
and the Pit, yeah.
Apocalypse and the Pit. Yeah. So normally that would mean that at the top of the cast list would be myself and Georgia Spencer as Ace. But as we mentioned, Georgia Spencer had dropped out as Ace, and we sent out a very urgent casting call to be like, hey, we need not only someone who could play Ace and play Ace well, and hopefully for the foreseeable future to play Ace, but we also need someone that can get in lines pretty fast, because we kind of need to edit this story like really soon. So if you could get those lines into us, like audition, get cast, get those lines into us, that'd be fantastic. And that's asking a lot of any actor.
and let's I think it's okay to deal with this. We got some auditions. One of our regulars auditioned, Taya Van Dijk, who is amazing to be cast in anything.
Hang on. So we only have, hang on, Jacob, damn it, shut up. So so we only had 2 auditions for Ace, and I'm not complaining on that, because I'd rather there weren't a lot as compared to dealing with a ton of people and only picking one out. So we set up a casting call. I chose, I think, 2 TV lines and 2 new adventure lines, just to sort of, get a full spectrum of emotions for Ace. And as Jacob mentioned, Taya Van Dijk auditioned, and we met the wonderful Aaliyah E. Torrey. And through this casting process, instead of we went into it with no companions, and came out of it with 2. So we cast Aaliyah as Ace. because Aaliyah is Aaliyah, and Aaliyah has since gone on to appear in countless Doctor Who fan audio dramas, and Witchmark was only in July, believe it or not. And so much, it feels like she's done so much more since then, because she really has, and she's fantastic. And at the same time, I think Jacob and I have been planning for a really long time to ask Taya this particular question, but through all this, we said to Taya, we're like, hey, we have someone else to play Ace. We've been wondering for a while now if you would like to play Bernie Summerfield, a companion coming up that we need for the foreseeable future.
And that was done partially because she sounds a bit like Lisa Bowerman.
She does, yeah.
But partially because of just looking at the way she tackled death in Revelation, the Pythia, she has the range. Benny, we knew Benny was going to be a hard person to cast because of the nature of transit. Because Benny doesn't really appear a lot in transit or the pit.
Yeah, and so she said yes, and more on that later, obviously, because upcoming in March, although the sneak peek for it should already be out, but I don't think she's actually in it. But she'll be in the trailer, I'm sure. Brian, wink, wink.
Transit will be starting to release at the end of February, actually.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I keep forgetting that we bumped it up a week. Yeah,
we bumped it up a week because everything went so quickly.
Yeah. At the time of recording this, I only have one episode left in transit to edit, so hoorah. But yeah, so Taya will be playing Benny, and as such, Aaliyah became our new ace for the last adaptation of the Cat's Cradle trilogy, being Witchmark. So she's amazing, obviously. I'd argue even better than Georgia. I think. I don't think that's controversial to say. Very happy to have her in the adaptations. Can't wait to see what she brings to the table in the future. So as such, what was Joey Morgan as the Doctor and Georgia Spencer as Ace became Joey Morgan as the Doctor and Aaliyah E. Torrey as Ace. And I don't think we've had a disaster like that ever since. I think we've done okay, but I don't want to speak too soon. Moving on, as far as the rest of the cast of Witchmark,
this one was hard to cast. This was difficult.
Yeah. So we had Marcus doing I guess he's not even like really the main villain of the piece. He's just sort of an antagonist. He played Gwynny, but also that means that he played her and an old Davy. The different forms that he takes throughout the story. Love Marcus in those roles. We also had one of my favorite Zach Rosenfeld roles as Inspector Stevens.
Zach Rosenfeld went absolute ham here,
and he's so fun.
We kind of told everyone to go a bit ham for this one because
you had to make it fun somehow. Because Witchmark it's not necessarily a good book, and
I will say, Andrew, please do not go attack Andrew Hunt on Twitter for writing a bad book. He is an amazing person.
That he is. And actually, as far as this is actually during the making of this, we actually learned that Andrew Hunt had already heard of our upcoming adaptation of Witchmark, and he was impressed with what we had put out so far, which I think at that time was both the sneak peek and the trailer. So,
I'm gonna say,
what's up, Brian?
I kind of shit my pants at that.
He liked my trailer.
Oh, he did like yours. Yes, he did. Yeah.
Did we not tell you?
I was so proud.
Did we not tell you that?
I told my mommy and everything.
God damn it, Brian.
But yeah, anyway, we told Rosenfeld in particular, go ham. He's a police officer.
And two of my favorite castings in this story come in the form of two people on this call. Jacob Licklider and Brian Corrigan as David and Jack, respectively.
Okay, let's talk about this. Let us talk about this. Because this is something that came up in scripting. I had come up on this idea that it just hit in my head. Because I was like, these characters are so bland. What if I made David and Jack a couple?
And I disagree with that, because first off, the whole point of the adaptation was to cut so much from it. We don't want to add another plot to it. And also, how would you naturally bring that out in dialogue when you only have so much time to tell a story this short? So it didn't actually. So no suggestions of that actually made it into the adaptation.
However,
Corrigan come across as unintentionally really, really gay for Jacob Licklider.
which I will say, we get better. We get better at LGBT representation in upcoming stories. Trust us. But
well, no, I mean, like it's I mean, it's an implied gay romance. I think between you two. I would call it that at this point, based on
Joey. I'll tell you what. When I was doing it, I was initially like, I want to play a male version of Susan. And only listening back did I realize, oh, that's a little gay.
I mean, of course, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, yeah. I think it's kind of funny that like that idea. I think it's kind of funny that like it was an idea that me and Jacob had talked about early on, and we, it didn't get very far. We ended up nixing it pretty early on because there's no room for it in the story. But then it ended up happening accidentally anyway in the end, just because of your performance.
I exist to ruin all your plans.
Well, no. In a way, you helped the plan because it was a plan that we didn't actually end up doing, and you did it for us anyway. So, you also, Brian, you also play Constable Hughes in this. You do a sort of pseudo Welsh accent, which I actually rather enjoy.
Dude.
What's
do you
up?
remember how upset I was that you cast me in that role? Because I was like, Joey, I cannot do that accent. Please don't make me do it. And he said, do it.
But I liked it.
I bet I got down on my hands and knees. I begged you not to make me do it, and I did it anyway.
And you did a great job, Brian. So let's see. We also had Corey Williams as Nuada, did a great job. One of my favorite Dylan Heath performances as Kulain.
Another one we were told, go over the top, Dylan. Just do it.
He did like this wonderful, like full on like 60s performance. Very much like a 60s. What's up?
Just realized that we forgot to mention that I get the first F-bomb of the VNAs and Warhead, and then I also get another F-bomb here.
You do. And you want to know something? Neither of those are actually in the books.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I put them in because sometimes.
Well, no, I remember the goal of that we said was because we had transit coming up, and transit can't just come out of nowhere like it does in the original line and just have what is it? I think 14 F-bombs in the original text.
Yeah,
and I mean, we cut most of those for the adaptation, but like we knew we were still going to keep them.
Because we were trying to cut them, but because they were in like internal monologue.
Yeah, exactly.
Narration,
exactly.
Things that are the internal and adapting things. Internal monologue and the narration are the bits that go in the largest quantity. I'll sometimes change it to dialogue or have people just talking to themselves, as you can get away with in an audio drama, but never nearly as much as the book itself.
So the goal of adding them into Warhead and Witchmark was to sort of like slowly ease us into transit, so that it wasn't as jarring when it actually came up. And I think it actually worked out in the end. I can't see us including many F-bombs later on in the adaptations, but I'm glad that we at least like built up to it in transit. Unlike what was so jarring about transit when it was first published was that all of that explicit content really did come out of nowhere. Anyway, we also had Bobby Shadow as Driffid, Mason Peters as Captain Reese, Avery Clark did Janet and Bathsheba.
Nathan Beatty as Hugh. Let's talk about Hugh and Janet for just a moment.
Is that Nathan too?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Dude,
You forget how much range this dude has, Brian.
Yeah, he's great. He really is. And
I'm
honestly, like,
and that these are all his characters. I'm just like, wait, that's the same guy. The voices sound nothing alike.
exactly.
Yeah, no. What's interesting about Hugh and Janet is that they are only in the first episode.
But I love Nathan and Avery as like an old married Welsh couple. I think they're really fun together.
Oh yeah, it is. It is fun. I was going to
honestly,
cut their
like
deaths.
the story is really fun to listen to.
I was going to cut their deaths in the duplicate plot.
But no, you have to have those because otherwise.
But then Joey reminded me that they show up again in Return of the Living Dad, and because that's a Kate Orman book.
Well, the duplicates show up in Return of the Living Dad, and also if you ended up cutting those duplicates and eventually cutting them from Return of the Living Dad, then you'd have a Hugh and Janet just not appear in the rest of the story for absolutely no reason. So at least keep their deaths, kill them off properly, and end their plots.
Yes.
So, but honestly, I love their death scene. I think it's a great part one cliffhanger, and honestly, it's like one of my favorite scenes that me and Aaliyah did together. I loved us as the duplicates. I think we did a great job with that. We both like sort of immediately put on this really like stoic, talking unnaturally Doctor and Ace, and I think it turned out really really nicely in the end. And again, made a great cliffhanger. I think them saying like mission complete in unison at the end. I think it all came together rather nicely. We also had Lily May Sheridan in this as Bat the Unicorn, and Connor Malleth's second adaptation appearance as Emrys Hughes, which I really loved him in this one. I loved him as like this crazy shotgun wielding lunatic that scares off Ace at the beginning and eventually is
casting him as a crazy old man. It's like you have him play crazy old man in the next one too.
That's true. He is a crazy old man. Where is? Never mind. Okay. Yeah. So I guess is that it? Oh yeah, Brian. Trailer. Talk about the trailer.
Okay. So the trailer. Basically, the only really really cool thing about it, I think, is that Andrew Hunt noticed it and really liked it. Otherwise, I despised making this trailer. This trailer was the hardest thing I have ever had to put together for Joey. Ever. I mean,
why?
As tedious as editing for Romance of Crime is. And Romance of Crime is at least entertaining because even when Marcus screws up, he's really wholesome to listen to. Because I don't know, there's something that's just sort of adorable about Marcus when he screws up. He's just like, dang it! It's funny. Anyway.
I love that. Wait, because I know exactly what that sounds like, Brian, because I've edited enough Marcus Cotton lines to be like, I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly.
That's great.
It's just a joy to listen to. This trailer, oh my god, this trailer. So first of all,
just one last thing. Like Marcus will get like tongue tied and it'll be like, oh, no, gonna try that again. And it's like he's like so calm and collected even when he screws up. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how he does that because I just swear really loudly.
Yeah, same. Same.
Right. So basically, this is a short story. I already don't have a lot to work with. I've been looking on the internet for like weeks now because I knew I was going to have to edit this trailer. I was like, I don't have it.
And also, I gave you everything to work with, though, didn't I? Everything except for like 2 or 3 scenes towards the end, and you had most of the story to trailer.
You did, but
yeah, we should say when Brian makes the trailers, he doesn't always have everything. Like,
he rarely ever has everything. I think there's only been like maybe one occasion where you had everything.
And I wouldn't be surprised if with Transit there's everything to work with because we're so close to the end of that.
I don't think. Oh yeah, I need to send you the trailer stuff, Brian. You won't have the last part, but you'll have everything else.
Okay, so essentially, I didn't have a lot to work with because the story is only 2 parts long, and I also, was looking forever for a decent track for this trailer because I knew I couldn't do the synth stuff because the synth stuff only really works if you're doing like sci-fi, or at least, a sci-fi story set on Earth. This is more fantasy centered. And I was like, so I can't use the synth, and I can't use an electric guitar like I did for Time of Your Life. And I had such a hard time actually finding like a jovial sort of, almost like, I don't want to say medieval because that's not what it is, but sort of like fantasy score, because a lot of fantasy trailer scores are like really dark and gloomy. So the only thing I could find was like a demo track from a video game called Hollow Knight Silksong that isn't out yet. And so that's what I used, but because it's a video game piece, right? I couldn't actually find an appropriate place to cut it and like have it work. And so I had to use the entire track, is essentially what I'm saying. So I had like, I don't know, 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes to fill with a story that already doesn't have like a really, it doesn't have a ton of like really tense moments and like,
And
really,
it only runs 48 minutes.
really exciting stuff. Witchmark is not an exciting story. To work as far as like trailer to get someone pumped for a story coming out. And when I say some of the lines, I mean most of the lines. So it was a really hard one to edit, and it was the one I spent the most time on. And there were many times where I just rage quitted on it, and I hate it.
All right, then.
I think it
Tell
turned
us
out
how you really feel.
I think it turned out all right. It's just the editing process behind it just fried my nerves.
Nice. All right. I guess that's it for Witchmark. Let's move on to the last one. The biggest project we've ever done, and one that is very fresh in all of our minds. The Scales of Injustice, adapted by Jacob Licklider and Dylan Heath, for that matter. Jacob, you had a different, rather unique scripting process for this one. Tell us about it.
We did. Well, I think I remember Dylan came to you, Joey.
Yes. Okay. Oh, you want to know how far back this goes? This goes back to the very first live stream of Dylan's I was ever on. I think I was on with you, Jacob, and someone else, some other guy that I've never been in a video with again. But I was almost with you
like
guys.
George Sheard or something.
No. It was someone else. I remember some guy I had never heard of in any capacity. But I was on that stream, and you guys all left, and it was just me and Dylan left. And I remember, like, towards the end, like, you and me, Jacob, we were, like, shouting about like, the adaptation. We were like, oh, yeah, like, promote the novel adaptations, listen to the novel adaptations, whatever. And you want to know how far back this goes? I think Exodus wasn't even out yet, or was about to come out.
Yeah, it sounds like Exodus was probably out, because I remember we had gotten the idea. We had, by the time Dylan came on board, we knew we were doing Scales after Time of Your Life as the next missing adventure.
Yeah. So Dylan had asked me. He was like, "Hey, if you're adapting novels, he's like, I've written a few." He's like, I like writing scripts. Like, I'd be interested in adapting something. And I was like, "Oh, I mean, yeah, I could talk to Jacob about that. I could see where that goes." And we talked about it, and we sort of agreed that and a certain upcoming adaptation that we haven't announced yet that Dylan is going to be writing was going to be the first novel that he wanted to do. But to sort of test the waters, we were like, do you want to like co-write an adaptation with Jacob? And he said yes. So we were like, okay, we have this really big story coming up. It would be really nice to split the workload. It's 7 episodes long. Say Jacob does all the even, does all the odd episodes, and Dylan does all the even episodes.
Yes. Because so then I had at least the opening and closing under me.
Yeah. And it'll still feel like one big piece. And I was like, and we said, like, you basically just read through the novel. It's a really good novel, so we're not going to cut much. So basically just do a straight adaptation and see where it goes. And then scripting began. Tell us a bit about that, Jacob.
So scripting began, and it's the most interesting co-writing experience, because we didn't talk much until either our episodes were done. Like, Like, we didn't check over each other's work until the episode was done. Like, I went ahead and was like, okay, I'm just gonna power through my 4 episodes. So I got mine done really, really quickly because I am a machine and I can adapting a script. I have a really, I'd say I have a pretty good eye for how they work. Would you agree, you two? Like,
I would agree.
Yeah.
and
You've been doing it a few years now. Yeah.
yeah, like, I know. Okay, this is how this works. But Dylan, of course, it took him more time.
The only audio thing he's ever written was that one thing that I keep wanting to see the light of day but never will. What's it called? Attrition or something? I think it's
What
called.
is it?
Dylan has this.
He was going to do a Doctor Who fan series with Harry and Jerry. And
for small beginnings, right?
yeah, and it wasn't going to be like, a jokey thing like you expect when Harry is involved with anything.
Or Jerry, for that matter.
No, because Jerry takes these things actually kind of seriously.
Jerry can be a serious. Jerry may surprise you. He can be a very serious person.
Quite. But go on,
Brian.
Jacob.
What? Me? Oh, okay, right. Sorry. Yeah. So basically, the big challenge here was just having Dylan find the time. So it kind of helps that we tested the waters, so we could make sure we scheduled the next one at a time where he can actually have time to finish it.
Yeah.
And it came together really well. It helped that Scales of Injustice, like Revelation before it, was just nothing needed to be changed. Scales of Injustice, the book, is a big tribute to John Pertwee, so it's a classic Pertwee story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All you got to do, maybe add one line here to make sure people understand like what visually is going on, and you're good.
Yeah.
I figured I should probably mention this here. Just like a funny little error that I caught. I guess it exists in the script too, because I missed it when I was initially reading it. But when the episode released, and after I'd read the actual book myself, Joey, you remember that part 2 cliffhanger, right? It's the one where one of the Silurians basically walks up to the Doctor, kicks him, and says, I can't remember what exactly they say.
You will all be wiped out. 8 vermin. Yeah, 8 vermin, you will all be wiped out. Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, that Silurian is meant to be one of the sisters. And it isn't in our adaptation.
Who cares?
That's a very difficult thing because it's.
Well, see, here's the thing though. I didn't like that idea though because it should. The idea is that like you should get into the sister and like the hybrid arc, the hybrid story later on, and focus and like make that a moment of like, oh, the Silurians are back, and I made it a Silurian that appears later on and is talking to Augie and everyone in the council chamber, and I did that Silurian. That was the Silurian voice. That was like my main. That was like my quote unquote regular Silurian voice that I did. And
I don't know. I just found it awkward when you get into part 2 and the Silurian that kidnaps the Doctor is weirdly not present for that first scene.
I think it could be any Silurian though.
I think it works, Brian.
Maybe I'm just stickler for original book stuff then.
Yeah.
Brian, you're the one that wants to rewrite the entirety of the 8 Doctors. I don't know what you're talking about with original book shit.
He's just the Gary Russell fanboy.
Yeah. See, the thing about the is the 8 Doctors is bad.
So anyway, getting into Scales then. So we knew I was going to play the Doctor because I had played the 3rd Doctor before for Brian.
And I think we'll say we knew that this was going to be a massive cast.
And actually, you know what? I'm going to go back a bit further because the Scales of Injustice production goes even further back than talking with Dylan about scripting it. You want to know how far back it goes? It goes back to when you were first discussing the possibility of doing the novel adaptations. Because I remember you guys talking about scripting Genesis, and this is one of the things that piqued my interest. I was like, oh, if you're doing Scales of Injustice, then can we do, if you're doing adaptations, can we do Scales of Injustice? And you guys said, yeah, which goes back even further, Brian, to the very first video that we ever did together, which was the podcast of death, where we talked about Warriors of the Deep, and we're like, hey, where does Ixthar come from? And we discovered it was from the Scales of Injustice, and that's what piqued my interest in that.
Well, Joey, these links, they've been seeded throughout time. It's just also clever.
Hey, why did that young Mr. Moffat show up?
So that's how far back this goes. This has been a project that I wanted to do forever, and so obviously I was very excited to be playing the Third Doctor again. I think I've finally gotten my Third Doctor voice to a point where I was truly happy with it, and I was ready to do a full performance for this gigantic story. And at the same time, we were trying to find a way to do Silurians, because I didn't just want to leave that open to a casting call. And I was like, Brian, you do monster voices and everything. You can do Silurians, but there are like 10 of them. There are like 10 Silurian speaking parts, and you can't do all of them.
Plus, and some of them aren't just Silurians. Some of them are Sea Devils, and some of them are Silurian Sea Devil hybrids.
I want to be clear on something. In retrospect, I am glad you took half the load on the Silurians, but I was initially pissed at the time, because at the time,
I know you were mad about that because you wanted to play all of the Silurians, and I was like, no, you cannot play all the damn Silurians. They need to sound different.
Could have, but then when we actually went to do it, stuff happened, and I got real depresso espresso.
All right then. So we decided to split it up between the two of us and have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Midway through recording, I like really dropped the ball. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember, but I was getting them in like good time, and then I went through that break, and then it was like last minute scrambling.
Yeah, I remember. But we decided to split it between the two of us, and we got our good friend Corey Williams to do another one, another Silurian named Chuck. So the split up became me as Augie, Sula, Tarpak, and just another random Silurian to this.
And I think some various random, like, here's just a Silurian who is present in the room that isn't named.
Yeah. So then, Brian, you were Baal, Kruga, Tani, Ixthar, and Nalix, and Corey was Chuck. So yeah, so there actually were 10 of them. Oh wow, hot damn.
It's my favorite.
What's up?
Tani's my favorite.
See, I think your Baal is better.
I like Tani because more effort went into Tani.
Well, more effort may have went into Tani, but your Baal is just a better voice.
You're entitled to that opinion.
So let's talk about casting. Easily the largest casting call we've ever had to do, and my God, looking at this cast list right now is insane. So
strap in, folks, because we're going to probably talk about everyone.
So, Liz Shaw.
Michael,
wait, before we go,
what?
I have nothing to do with actually casting, so I'm just going to mute and take a quick 15-minute nap while you guys talk about this.
You think it's going to take only 15 minutes? So, Liz Shaw is a really difficult role to cast. We learned this very, very quickly, and in the end, we decided to go with one of our regulars, someone that didn't actually end up auditioning for the project, but one that we thought was great for the role, and Lily Mae Sherritt came back to play Liz Shaw, and I think she did an excellent job. Very much excited for it and up for it, and I know Lily's a massive Pertwee era fan, and Liz is one of her favorite companions, so it was really fun for her too, and really fun to listen to, and I think
she sells episode 7. She sells that ending.
Specifically the warmth of it. Yeah. Liz Shaw as a very human character. so we have that. I think, me and her have a great dynamic, made all the better by the cherry on top of the unit cake, which is Michael Gibbons as Brigadier Lethbridge.
I'm going to say this: casting this story, my biggest fear was casting the unit family.
See, I was actually, I guess I kind of share that, but I was mostly scared of casting Liz, because the Brig, I had a.
She counts.
Well, yeah, I know. I said, but I said it's like, more specifically Liz. But the Brig, I didn't know like what we would get. I think you can listen to the behind the scenes video. Marcus shares a little story about, there was a time where I thought he might be able to do the Brig, and he ended up being super
we knew that
characters.
if Marcus, if no one else did a decent, it would probably go to Marcus, because Marcus could do it.
Yeah, and honestly, like, obviously, much like Rastalon with Times Crucible, the Brig was a character that a ton of people auditioned for, and a ton of people did really great voices for, but none of them were quite the Nick Courtney impression that we absolutely needed.
Partially, it's because in the Scales of Injustice, this is not the Brig. When people think of the Brig, they think of seasons 9, 10, and 11, and 12, I guess. That's what they're thinking.
I'd say,
yeah. What's up?
Can I just say that the response to Michael Gibbons as the Brigadier, though, I think is probably one of the most, what's the word? Well, God damn it, what's the word? Well received castings we've done.
Yeah, definitely. So Michael kind of came out of nowhere. We hadn't heard from Michael in a while, and this was the first project he auditioned for since Times Crucible, and he just kind of came out of nowhere, said, "This is my Brigadier voice," and absolutely knocked it out of the goddamn park.
The Brigadier carries so much nuance here, because if you haven't listened to the story, go listen to it. It's probably this might be recency bias, but it's probably our best adaptation so far.
I might agree with that. I think I need a bit more retrospect on it, but I'd probably agree with that.
But the Brig has so much nuance. This is the story where he loses his wife, he loses Kate.
And it's a story, and Scales of Injustice as a story is, in addition to being the season 7 love letter and Pertwee love letter and Silurian romp that it is, it's a story about the Brig first and foremost. Like,
it's also about the Brigadier's redemption in the eyes of the Doctor. Let's be honest.
Especially coming straight off the Silurians, which actually we didn't talk about that in the scripting. When we were talking about scripting, you had this great idea.
I did.
Scripting.
I forgot about that.
I want to tell this story. I really want to tell this story.
Yeah.
So you had this great idea. When you first started scripting, when you started getting a head start and ahead of Dylan, and you were like, I want to add this pre-credits scene, and I want to do Doctor Who and the Silurians from the Brig's perspective, because the story itself is about the Brig. It's about him coming straight off the Silurians. It's about his redemption from that. It's about his redemption just from all of season 7, because him and the Doctor are at each other's throats in season 7, and you want to sort of reconcile that, because they're a bit more on regular speaking terms by season 8, by Terror of the Autons, and Scales as a book, it bridges this gap between season 7 and 8, I think, wonderfully, but mostly for the Brig. So you have that. You have his divorce, his relationship with the rest of the unit crew. It's an amazing arc for him as a character. So you wanted to add this pre-credit scene where you saw the Brig's perspective of Doctor Who and the Silurians, and
you said you wanted. I didn't want it to be the Brig decided to just genocide the Silurians.
Because like he's okay with doing it, but he doesn't want to just genocide. Yeah, he doesn't want to just genocide them as the Doctor views it. He doesn't want to do that immediately, like as his first option, but he's okay with doing it nonetheless. So you also wanted to add Benton into this, get a bit more of a bridge the gap, and get a bit more between season 7 and 8, because Benton's only there in Inferno, right? Or is he in
He's in Ambassadors too.
Okay, so
the idea was,
so you wanted to add,
it's like, why
so
he's in Ambassadors and he's in Inferno, why isn't he in Silurians?
Yeah, so you have so you added Benton into that, and you did this you wrote this great scene between the two of them, and you were like, I don't know how to end it. And I was like, ooh, okay, let me take it. And so my only contribution of like original content to the Scales of Injustice was how that pre-title sequence ended, with like sort of fading it out. The Brig says that is an order, Sergeant, and Benton walks away. The bombs start to go off. You have the Doctor's words echoing over it about the whole "that's murder" thing. You hear the Silurians screaming, and that was how I wanted to do that. And that's how he faded it out. I wanted a very clear cut there, and make it like a completely separate scene. It is just Doctor Who and the Silurians from the Brig's perspective, and then we get into the Scales of Injustice. It's not part of the Scales of Injustice, but it is a great lead into it.
Was I the first person to listen to that? Or
to the finished product of it? Yes. No, you were the first one. Yeah, you were the first.
I was the first. Dude.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, when you showed that to me, I know you know this, but I don't think Jacob does. Jacob, when he showed that to me, I fucking squealed like a pig, dude. I was so happy. I was like, oh my god! I had like a full nerd out sesh with him. I re-listened to it like 3 times in his presence.
Well, I sent you what? I ended up sending you what the first like 3 minutes. It was the title sequence, and then the whole opening Stalker sequence with Grant Trainer and the Pale Man.
Yeah, because the Stalker
sequence. The Stalker sequence, take it or leave it. But that pre-title sequence, man.
Well, I will say this was the first that pre-title sequence, at least to me, represents a huge amount of growth over these last 2 years for me in adapting. Because I am shit at original dialogue. I'm less shit now. I was really shit at original dialogue.
There were like whole bits where you're like, okay, I'm gonna cut like a bunch of dialogue here and sum it up in a few lines for this adaptation. And I was like, okay, cool, yeah, you do that. And then I got to script editing, and I'd see like these awful lines of dialogue that I'd be like, and I'm gonna like make this sound like actual people are saying it.
But like, I think that dialogue between the Brig and Benton, I captured them perfectly.
That is a bold statement from the guy that wrote it. But yeah, I do think you did. Yeah, I agree with that.
And it's yeah.
Yeah. So moving on from that, Brian, we already talked about. You also got roped into doing Inspector Hovern and Lawson later on.
Was another one I was hesitant about doing. I think I actually talked to you about it. I was like, man, you just made me do a Welsh guy for the last one. Please don't make me do another weird accent. And you're like, you're doing another weird accent.
Well, it's a Dutch character, but I was like, you could basically get away with doing just a softer version of your Hitler voice from Exodus. And I think you were mostly intimidated by the fact that we cast actual Dutch people as the other characters in that scene.
And we'll get to that
because nobody who was actually Welsh was really in Witchmark, were they?
No, absolutely nobody. No.
Yeah,
it's just a smattering of attempted Welsh accents.
With
some veering off into Glaswegian.
With that in Scales, like weren't like most of them Dutch. It was scary. I didn't wanna, and you made me anyway.
So then we move on to Marcus. I think this is the first time we ever double cast Marcus in something.
It is. So, actually, I want to talk about casting Marcus.
You go ahead.
First off, he auditioned for several roles, including the Brig. He auditioned for Benton, and he auditioned for the Pale Man. Both auditions sent chills up our spine. The Pale Man in particular.
The Pale Man, we were like dead set, and we were like, oh god, Marcus needs to do this, doesn't he? And then he also just did a fantastic John Levine impression.
Yeah.
Or really, actually, I think is it like John Levine's like actual voice is different from his Benton voice.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. There's a bit more of a lisp with Benton, I think, almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we ended up putting him in both roles because damn, he's just
and
fantastic.
again, Brian may have said that the stalker sequence at the beginning of part 1, he could take or leave. That sent chills.
Oh yeah, I love like him like calling out doing the beginning, like calling out train and like it's so good.
He has this sort of
fantastic.
sing-songy
I will
voice.
say this. He does do a really, really cool laugh.
And I am so glad. I am so glad. My one fear with casting the Pale Man was we were going to get someone to try to do a sort of Kevin Stoney.
That's how I would have.
And you don't,
if I had done
see,
it.
I disagree with that. He's more stoic than a Kevin Stoney role.
Yeah, like well, because a lot of people compare the Pale Man to Tobias Vaughn. Even Russell does it in Scales.
For obvious reasons, right? For obvious reasons.
Yeah. So
I don't think that really makes it into the adaptation, though, does it?
No, we cut the Vaughn stuff.
We cut the Vaughn stuff.
That was like the one thing we cut from it, though, isn't it?
That was the one thing I said. I'm cutting this. We are not doing.
Well, actually, there was some other scene from part 2 or part 4. It was one of the Dylan episodes where I even asked Dylan about it. I was like, Dylan, do you have any clue who's talking in this scene? Because he had like 2 characters in it that he had like man 1, man 2, and I was like, Dylan, I'm not including this scene unless you tell me who these characters are. And he's like, I don't know. The book didn't tell me who the characters.
Yeah,
and
Russell does have this trouble. Russell does have this problem of not always making it obvious who's speaking. Like,
yeah, and I'm like, fine.
Brian and I adapted for a future adaptation. We adapted another Russell book, and there's the same problem there at points.
Yeah, so I was like, no, it's getting cut. So that and the Tobias Vaughn stuff, I think, are the only 2 things we cut. But I can't remember
we did come across that issue. You and I had like a brain aneurysm for like 2 minutes in our adaptation where we were just like, who is saying this? Just had
oh, the fun of adapting prose. Anyway, so let's see. So that does it for Marcus's stuff. Oh, also, I did want to mention, like, I love Benton's one scene with the Brig when he overhears the Brig talking about his divorce. I love that whole thing where because it leads into the Brig asking Benton about the next captain, and Benton doing the whole line of like, "Can I be candid, sir?" And him talking about he's like, "No, it's not going to be me. I'm not going to be the captain. It's Yates." I love that whole scene. I think.
Yeah.
You know,
and here's the thing. My one thing is because the Benton Yates relationship started in Eye of the Giant, which we haven't done yet. We're going to do it eventually, of course.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing where I was like, I maybe would like to have done Eye of the Giant first for that, but Marcus sells it. Marcus sells it, and Caleb sells it.
Although I think what really helps is about doing Scales first is that the Brig Benton stuff does come out of nowhere, and I love the Brig's reaction to Benton saying all that. He's like, I don't think I've heard you say more than like 3 words or something. So I love the Brig's reaction to that. But yeah, you started moving on to this. Yes, Caleb we cast as Sergeant, as of the story, Sergeant Yates, who was promoted to captain by the end. And I loved him. I loved him as doing a sort of pseudo Richard Franklin impression. But honestly, there's no such thing as like a proper impression of his voice. I think. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Franklin's hard to do. Franklin is impossible, and I think
Franklin's voice, well, I don't really want to say suffers because that implies that he has a bad voice. He doesn't, but he's got like a voice that can only be produced naturally by one set of vocal cords, sort of like Peter Davison's, whereas like it's a unique voice, but it's also kind of just bland to the point where it's hard for anybody else to replicate. I suppose is how to put it.
So there's that. Oh yeah, one other minor change we made to the adaptation, although we actually kept it in the script, was Janet Kristen as a character actually being a British double agent. But because of the way that casting ended up working, because we wanted to keep it in the adaptation that she was a British double agent, and we still kept that she was a double agent, but not that she would like switch accents, that she was like doing the fake Dutch accent. So we ended up casting Elena Cole, one of our regulars, in the role, and we ended up nixing the whole idea of her switching accents back and forth because it's such a specific ask from any open casting call. It's just, I think it's impossible to properly capture. If you take my meaning. Yeah. I mean, not impossible, but impossible for a fan production like ours. Let's see, we already talked about Ark. Let's see, Audrey, we have again in this one as Maisie Hawk and Barbara Redworth. I love a lot of the Maisie Hawk scenes in this, specifically the restaurant scene where she calls the brig when he's out at dinner with Fiona, and then I love Maisie's scene with with Yates later on when she talks about how her husband was killed by a sailor.
Yeah, because you really get to see the damage that unit causes here.
Yeah. Let's see. Then we have Lyra back again as Carol Bell and Sarah Marshall. Dylan as Sir Marmaduke Harrington Smythe. Brian, I think you should take this one because.
Yeah, because this is my favorite Dylan performance in anything ever. I love this man. Okay, so one of the roles that I have played for the novel adaptations in the past, and they're sort of similar in the sense that Dylan and I played them similarly. They're two completely different characters, but way back in Genesis, I played Dumuzi, who I decided to characterize as sort of like a sneering, sort of too good for you villain. And Dylan very much does that with Sir Marmaduke Harrington Smythe here, and he sells it really, 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 really well, to the point where like you don't think that type of role is something that could give you chills because that's sort of like generic cackling villain, but he does it so well it gave me actual chills. And just like knowing the type of person Dylan is, it's no wonder that he's good at it either. Like it's like simultaneously hilarious just to see Dylan in this role, and also like really awesome to hear him pull it off so well.
And also just him and Marcus off of each other in particular. Like, oh my god.
Because this is, I guess this is the first appearance of the stock Tory figure for the Pertwee era.
I'm trying to remember the exact line. He goes off on some rant. I think it's in part 3 or 4. He's in, maybe it's part 2. He's in
when he's talking to what's his name? Peter Morley, right? In part 2, I think, when he's doing the whole that back Peter line, that whole thing.
Yeah, that one. That's the one.
Yeah, the like, I'm gonna get that pompous ass Lethbridge Stewart, that whole thing. Oh, I love that monologue. It's so good.
That line guys, remember, Doctor Who was never political.
Never. But yeah, so good. So good. Moving on, we have a newcomer, and I would love to have him in more adaptations. Credit named the Captain, who plays a friend, and I think
haven't they auditioned before this though?
No,
they hadn't. Oh, I thought they did.
No. I remember. I guess I could say his first name. He's on Twitter. Kevin messaged me on Twitter before he auditioned. He asking me a couple things about it. So yeah, this is the first thing he ever auditioned for and got in, and he does an amazing job. We have Lewis Kennedy. For those not in the know, that is Bobby Shadow. Lewis Kennedy plays Sir John Sudbury. Just this wonderful, like almost Christopher Benjamin-esque voice that I just I'm just in love with.
It works so well for the character.
It does. It really does. I love his scene with Fortescue. When they're going after the car. I think that's such a great scene together. New talent, and I would love to have her again at some point. Jay Snyder playing Fiona Lethbridge-Stewart and Sierra. Specifically, her as Fiona. I think her and Michael are fantastic off each other, and she just does this wonderful stoic, so done with the brig shit.
It's this tired woman who genuinely thinks her husband must be just having an affair after affair, or just doesn't care.
See, but my absolute favorite scene though is when she veers off the affair thing and gets it right on the money. When she says, "She's like, I think you're a spy. I think, what is it? This Maisie Hawk is some Miss Moneypenny." That whole thing. And then I love the way that Gibbons plays his reaction. He's like, "That's shit." She's like, how did the dialogue go? She goes, she's like, right on the money. He goes, preposterous was the word I was looking for. I think it's a great exchange. And again, part of my favorite scene in the whole adaptation, which is the restaurant scene with the two of them. I'm mostly proud of that, actually.
Well, and the brig says preposterous, and it's ridiculous, and then there's the maitre d' with the phone call from Maisie.
Yep, so good. But again, that's my favorite scene in it. The thing I'm most proud of in that one is actually that I found this wonderful classical restaurant piece to play in the background that was exactly long enough to go from beginning to end of the scene, that perfectly faded us out and gave us that nice somber ending after Fiona leaves the brig alone in the restaurant. I think it worked out so well, and again, it's my favorite thing we did in the adaptation. Let's see, moving on, we've got oh yes, that's right, Brian. Jessica Corrigan plays Catherine Wildman.
Oh, okay. So I actually have some funny behind the scenes stuff with this. First of all, when I sat her down to record it, there was a lot of noise happening outside. And people would just not. There's a couple arguing out in the street, which is I hate that shit. If you're going to argue, do it in your own house. Do not do it in the middle of the road in the neighborhood, especially in the middle of the day. Middle of the night is a whole different thing, but it's really annoying when you do it in broad daylight too, because I can actually see you out my window, and I want to yell at you from my own house. So there was that. And there was another thing I forgot to hook up my actual microphone to my computer, and I only realized this after she had finished recording all the lines, and I was not about to make her go back and do it again, because let's just say as soon as she finished, it was perfect timing, because the guy next door started mowing his lawn.
God damn it.
It was like a dog. I'm telling you, I finished my Silurian lines maybe a couple days before. I went to it was peaceful quiet. I went to get my mom. It had been peaceful quiet up until that point, and then the entire neighborhood just decided that all hell should break loose, and I was very mad. I think my sister also had some of her friends over, and they were running around outside and making noise.
Nice.
It was just I did yell at them. I said, "You guys, please be quiet and stop coming in and out of the house and slamming the doors."
So anyway, next up, the one and only appearance of we will definitely get in the adaptations again someday. Jerry Hobson as Robert Lyons, who I just adore in this.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Jerry is amazing.
Jerry really is. The absolute bastard that he is in real life does not reflect his genuine fun and talent.
Oh my God, I just realized if we ever do Business Unusual, I'm going to be playing the doctor next to him.
See, and now you realize how exciting it was for me with that long scene between the doctor and Robert Lyons.
I'm excited.
I should say, viewers, we have been friends with Jerry as long as we've known each other.
So anyway,
I've been friends with Jerry since before I met you two. Jerry was actually the first person I buddied up with when this whole group started forming.
you poor soul.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
so I'm gonna try to go through the rest of this cast list, hopefully relatively quickly, because I do need to start wrapping this up. Let's see, we have Ian Arne as Peter Morley. Love him in this. Mason Peters plays Mark Marshall really well, actually. I'm terribly proud of him in this one. It's probably the role that we've cast him in most outside of his comfort zone so far, and I think he did a great job. Let's see, Connor. We got Connor again as Alan Marshall, and I love his Justin Grayson, the washed up drunk actor that gets killed by a Silurian.
And then we have a newcomer who
yes, a long-time friend of mine, literally since childhood. Noah Whitner.
we should say how we cast people if we already know them. Like,
yeah, usually like if we're casting someone we already know, it's usually because it's like a quick like last minute addition because someone dropped out, or it's because we need to fill a smaller role. In this case, it's smaller role.
It was a smaller role. We also make sure that if it's someone that we know personally, like how I knew Will, Joey knows Noah, the other person makes the decision, so, as to avoid the bias.
Absolutely, yeah. So he plays Cloud Fortescue. He gets shot in the head, and it's wonderful. He'll also be appearing in Evolution later on this year. So yeah. Who's next? Another another addition of my own personal life. My sister is back in this one. She plays the Briggs' daughter, Kate Lethbridge Stewart, and she's adorable. What the hell was that?
That was me saying she's adorable at like the exact same time you were. My bad.
Oh, nice. Oh, you're all good. Yeah, so then we have our our two actual Dutch people we cast for our Dutch roles. Dr. Moore and Maya Dervoor, played by Peter VH and Marlene DS, did an excellent job, both of them. Zach Rosenfeld does two Pertwee-era impressions for some brief appearances. We have Tom Osgood and Scobie. Nathan Beatty plays Boyle, and the gender-swapped Patrick Haggard.
I will say, we only gender-swapped Patrick Haggard because we didn't have enough female auditions.
Very true.
And yeah, it's. I also say it's the one point where I'm a bit annoyed that Russell included this character, just because you're including Liz's love interest, and they share no scenes. Like,
quite.
Like, why?
Yeah, exactly. So
if they shared scenes, if they shared any scenes, we would not have gender swapped it.
Let's see. Josh Duffy plays Farley and Harry Atro. Harry Gosling plays Tracy and Dick Atkinson.
Who's another new person? Harry Gosling.
Yes, and he will be coming back later on this year in Evolution. Anthony Redmond, a friend of Josh Duffy's, actually plays Grant Trainer and Jim Griffin, and actually finishes us off, except for the addition of yours truly as the Merca.
Which I think that was a last minute thing where we had no idea how we were going to do the Merca sound effects.
And I was like, you know what? I'll just screech into a mic and I'll throw some voice filters over it. Let's see how that goes. And I think, honestly, I'm really proud of it, actually.
I helped, right? I think I helped.
You did a little.
I sent you you were having trouble with it.
You sent a how-to video.
I was like, well, I've sent you how-to videos recorded by me, but even I didn't know how to do that. So I was like, here, let me send you one that sounds really good.
See, that's a sound that I already knew how to do, though, with my own voice. Anyway, let's see. Trailer instructions. We actually had trailer instructions this time. We gave you a very specific idea of what to do for the trailer, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. So this one, you wanted me to do essentially what you wanted me to do, because you guys are like weird Pertwee stands.
Well, no. Joe, Brian, let's just say
you don't have to explain the reasoning to me, Jacob. I know why. No, so basically they asked me to do the Ambassadors of Death trailer, but for
this story. I suppose just because they wanted it to fit in with the overall celebration of season 7 aesthetic. Would
And
be my guess.
Ambassadors only gets like 1 or 2 mentions. It's the story that has the least impact on the plot of Scales.
Yeah, so I decided really early on that I kind of wanted to structure it exactly like the trailer for Ambassadors of Death. So
I think you had the dialogue of the first 4 episodes to work with, right?
yeah, so it was actually a little difficult because I didn't have the full story, and there was a lot of stuff I wanted to put in the trailer that that hadn't come my way yet. So essentially, what I ended up doing was I copied that structure of, if you've seen the trailer, basically it opens on the Doctor sort of having this monologue about basically the overall threat of the story. And so that's essentially just what I did with the Doctor in this one, because he has a conversation with Liz pretty early on about how he's like, I'm going to talk to the Silurians because there's evidence that they've come back, and I want to make sure that the Brigadier doesn't blow them up this time, whilst interspacing pauses in the monologue with bits from the story. So I think I did part of the pre-title sequence for the Brigadier. He says something along the lines of, blow the Silurians up, Benton. And Benton goes, but sir, and you have Michael Gibbons do that absolutely perfect, that is an order, Sergeant! Screech, which I love. And then you cut to Bal saying something similar about the ape vermin. And it just sort of follows that same structure that the Ambassadors of Death trailer does. I did all the BBC narration, but I said Security Kitchen Productions instead. I tried to get it as close to the source material as possible, I suppose. It took me a couple days.
Nice.
It's the easiest trick done for you.
I was very, very proud also of my usage of Carrie Bletton's Doctor Who and the Silurians music in it, mixed with some other music that we usually use. I think the mix worked all right in the end.
Unit theme.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I used that's right. I used the unit theme from Ambassadors of Death as well.
Which I think I told you to use that.
Yeah, both of you annoyed the hell out of me to force me to do that.
We do this.
So.
I will say in scripts there are points where I will be like, under this scene, I want this playing. And usually Joey agrees with me, especially if it involves classical music, because
that's true. That usually works out quite well.
I know for Revelation with the scene with Death on the Moon, I was the one who suggested Blue Danube. For Warhead, we the Moonlight Sonata was used at a pivotal moment that just came out together perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that's that. That's Scales. That's that. Oh God, that's over a year's worth of projects covered in a fairly reasonable time, 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Dude, I can't wait till the next one of these where we get Antonio on as well.
Oh, don't say why. I haven't announced that yet.
Don't say why. We should announce that soon, though.
Okay.
We should, but I'm gonna wait until it actually becomes relevant when I actually start editing his stuff into it. So, anyway, all right. I guess that about does it. I forget how I ended this video the last time. I guess we should only talk about novel adaptation stuff. So by the time this comes out, the Transit sneak peek will already be out. Transit trailer comes out early February, and Transit release begins February 27th. So yeah, that'll be the official start of this year's adaptation, and that should be really fun. As far as the rest of our release schedule, we're hoping to have both the sneak peek and trailer for the Pit out in April, and release for the Pit out in May. Evolution release should go something like sneak peek trailer June and July, release August and September, and then Deceit should be sneak peek trailer October, November, and then release in December. And that should be
our next
that should be
casting
what
will
the
be
year
in
looks like,
March.
roughly.
So our next casting is in
I
March, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
So please
All
keep an
right.
eye on the channel if you have ever been interested in joining us. We would love to see auditions from anyone. We always love getting new people, old people. Please.
Of
Feel
course,
free.
of course, absolutely. Yeah.
But
All right.
overall, like general thoughts on the years, though, right? On this year, like
Yeah, I'm very happy with
it's
this past year. I think
success.
we've improved a lot. What's up?
Oh, I was just still listing off things to think about. No, you're good.
Oh no, I was just saying I'm very happy with this past year. I think we've improved a lot as a group.
Yeah,
And
we've definitely come.
especially with that thing we need to announce soon. I think I think this next year especially I'm very excited about with where we go with the adaptations. I think we're taking the next big step that we need to with the adaptations, and I can't wait for you guys to for everyone listening to see and hear what we do with the projects in the future. I hope this has been another fun and hopefully not too grueling behind the scenes look at what we do here and how these editing processes usually go. Thank you both for coming on, by the way.
It's
sad we couldn't have a third guest.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm
Indeed.
going.
All right. Like what?
I'm going to burn the planet just because you thanked me. Ew, gross.
What? What?
Don't thank me.
Oh, okay.
I do it
All right.
because
Well, I guess that about
not for you.
I guess that about does it then. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for coming on, and I will see you guys next time, whenever that may be. Goodbye.